This is the Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff.
The 4 seed is last year's national runner-up in the dance for the 10th straight time behind Big Ten Player of the Year, Braden Smith. And in Providence, they will face High Point.
It's called Sex Panther by Odeon. It's illegal in 9 countries.
Who's having a new high point for their program.
Oh, wow, look at that reaction.
And showing out.
Oh, big time.
Their first tournament appearance, overcoming a 15-point deficit in the second half of the Big South.
It is that time of year. March Madness is fully upon us. We've got state high school basketball tournaments moving into the quarterfinals. We've got the NCAA tournament. Men's and women's fields are announced and set. And gentlemen, Purdue is a 4 seed. Indiana gets left out of the dance. North Carolina with one quad one win gets into the dance over West Virginia or Indiana. Take your pick. James Boyd, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, it probably helps to have some sway, I guess, with your AD being involved. And I know they said they wheeled him out of the room when he wasn't involved in the process, but obviously it can't hurt to have your AD be friends with the people who decide who's in or out of the tournament and their brand, honestly.
KB, thoughts? Indiana 50-50 though, right?
Good Monday morning to you. Happy St. Patrick's
Good to talk
Day.
to you. Oh, you're green today.
I'm seeing green, just Mark Dykton and I here on this.
I've got the green eyes. I'm set forever.
Does that mean
I'm set for life?
We pinched
Doesn't
them,
count.
Mark? Is that
We're
what
not
we'd
counting
be
green
doing?
eyes.
Oh, come on now.
No green eyes.
Is that what we'd be doing on the playground right now?
Yeah.
Pinch away. I will say this. Every Monday morning after Selection Sunday, when I get the bracket in my hands, I think Maddie's still asleep, so I'm okay to say this. It's like holding your firstborn.
Wow.
Just you got it here. It's like a father admiring a steak on a grill. This is just a beautiful sheet of paper. So I love this. I must
You'll
say
appreciate this because my son was born on Selection Sunday.
Look at this.
Oh, wow.
I mean, isn't it just beautiful just right here?
Yeah.
Honestly, there's a blankness beauty to it before I just
I was going to say,
put
it's
it to
perfect
shreds
now.
here.
It's perfect now.
Yeah, once Purdue High Point gets to halftime on Thursday, as they are one of the first games of the tournament. I got to start with Purdue. I mean, the fact that they have been a top 4 seed in 8 straight tournaments, I mean, that is such an astonishing figure, and what an accomplishment for Purdue that they just, over the last 8 years, boom, top 4 line, they're going to be there. As far as the bubble's concerned, West Virginia, they don't probably need any reason to light couches on fire any more than they already do, but they should be lighting couches on fire. Just absolutely irate why they are not in over North Carolina, and that's probably where my griping stops. I can't really make a strong case for Indiana taking out multiple teams, and frankly, I just think debating that covers up the story of a $5 million roster not making the NCAA tournament.
Not only that, I was at that game against Oregon, the first game that they played in the Big Ten tournament. Look, North Carolina wins their first game in the ACC, and then they push Duke right to the brink. They only really lose or have a chance to win that game because a kid steps into the lane on a free throw with a few seconds left and mucks everything up. But Indiana showed nothing in that tournament game against Oregon. There just wasn't much going on. They hung around kind of till halftime, and then that was it, JB.
Yeah, they went on a couple runs and they cut it down a few times, but like we always say, they have these moments where it looks like they don't know how to play basketball. Take bad shots, take rush shots, turn the ball over, don't defend well, and you can't have like those 3-minute stretches where you just don't score. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, but in basketball, the point is to put the ball through the hoop, and when you don't do that for minutes at a time, it's hard to win games at a consistent level. And so I thought that they rallied pretty well. I'll give them credit there late in the season, but they needed a better showing in the Big Ten tournament, and they had a chance to do so and kind of fell flat on their face in what was essentially a de facto like home game. Like that environment was all IU, and you still couldn't get it done.
That was certainly a poor final impression, but I'll go to what they did in the summer. Mike Woodson knew he was on the hot seat, and he chose to schedule soft. And when you schedule the soft non-conference schedule, you leave yourself susceptible. We can debate a lot of what means things to the committee, and certainly that is up for plenty of debate after how they reacted to the bracket yesterday. But non-conference schedule has always been a big deal. And Indiana had scheduled, I would say, pretty difficult under Mike Woodson his first few years, and then that changed this past season. They had an absolute joke of a non-conference schedule, and for what it's worth, if you look at a team like San Diego State, if you look at a team like North Carolina, they went above and beyond in the non-conference schedule. And I think that, when you look at some of these metrics, and again, I know it can get complicated and it can get real murky real quick, but if you look at why Indiana is way behind North Carolina metrically, I think you can point to a lot of that. So, again, West Virginia just absolutely irate. 6 quad one wins, 5 of them away from home. Bubba Cunningham brought up one of their best players getting hurt like in the first month of the season. I have no idea why that matters here in mid-March. And there's just a natural bias, I think, in that room. I don't know if people realize who the selection committee is, but there are a lot of mid-major ADs in that room. It's not just a bunch of North Carolina type ADs. Well, think about that. I wasn't born yesterday, but if I'm the AD at, High Point and the AD at North Carolina is running the entire selection committee, I might think to myself, if I put his team in 5 years down the road, if I'm trying to go up the ladder here of athletic directors in college sports, I might want that guy to speak well for me.
To remember me.
And
That's
so
right.
certainly I think the natural bias is there. But, yeah, West Virginia to me just should be irate here on this Monday morning.
Well, they probably are. We've got a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss. The Indiana women on 8 seed. They'll be going in, or 9. They're playing the 8-9 game. UCLA gets the number 1 overall seed there.
Chirp, chirp. Shout out to the Ball State women. They get in.
They're in.
They have had a great, great run. A lot of local flavor. Is that a Cardinal?
Yeah.
Sounds beautiful here on this Monday morning.
Mark looked hard for that.
So Ball
Jeff's
State,
like, what are you doing this morning? I'm like, pulling animal sounds.
That's what he did.
And he laughed. I'm like,
Oh,
no,
morning.
that's exactly what I'm doing.
Shout out to Allie Becky and crew there for Ball State. I watched pretty much a good amount of that game on Saturday. Yes, that was the Panther to lead off the show, correct, Mark, from High Point there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
High Point, the longest winning streak in college basketball right now.
They're rolling, and
It's called Sex Panther.
he's altered their mascot just a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if James and Jeff is ready for this, but get ready for this in the next 72 hours. This is what you will be hearing from 7 to 10 a.m.
I like that.
From a bracket standpoint.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Lots going on there. We'll also be talking about the Colts a little bit later on today. Former Colt joining his new team at the press conference, kind of throwing some shade at his old team. We'll talk about that a little later on today, James.
Yeah, you know me. I like it when it's shady. But I think that in all seriousness, when I saw the comments, they weren't that shady to me. They were reality. And we can definitely get into that. But I think sometimes when you see something, and it's funny because you'll have fans that are like, man, you took this out of context. And I'm like, I just quoted what he said about this topic when he was asked. So I'm like, what more context do you need?
It's
other than
always
the fact
our
that,
fault, James.
Yeah, which is fine. You know me. I love when things are my fault. I'll own that. But I just think that it's a sensitive subject right now. But in reality, you look at where Detroit is as
Grant
a franchise.
Stewart we're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you also look at where the Colts are. It's kind of flipped over just the perceptions of the teams. During the combine, right before the combine started, you had the team come back to win the Super Bowl and celebrate. And that was almost 20 years ago at this point. That's what the Colts have become, a team that's kind of living in the past and as of late hasn't been a perennial playoff team or even a relevant team league-wide.
Long injury report tonight. We'll hit on that as well for the Indiana Pacers. Pascal Siakam will miss his first game as a pro with Indiana. I certainly hope everything's good with his family. Personal matter. That will take Siakam away from the team. They are in Minneapolis tonight. The T-Wolves have not lost here in the month of March. Anthony Edwards like last night in their win. They did have a back-to-back, but the T-Wolves really didn't need to play their starters too much. So not only no Siakam, Halliburton questionable, Turner questionable, Nesmith questionable, and the bench, I would say, calling them questionable on Saturday night would have been a compliment as the Pacers lose to the Bucks.
That is rough.
In Milwaukee, and that means the head-to-head season series goes to Milwaukee. Now, the Bucks lost last night, and they do have 5 straight on the road. So, again, head-to-head is with Milwaukee, but a chance to try and get ahead of them in the standings here coming up this week.
All right, we got a lot going on today. It's a Monday, and it is March Madness. The NCAA tournament kicks off with some play-in games in just a couple of days. We'll talk about that as well. Get you up to date on everything happening in Indiana sports, along with James Boyd and Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton. I'm Jeff Rickard. You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan. It's that time. It's March Madness. You hear about all the different kinds of tournaments that are going on right now. KB talking about both the Indiana and Ball State women that got in. Purdue is in, obviously. Indiana
Hey, don't
gets
forget
left
about the Notre Dame
behind.
women.
I knew you were going to say that. I set you up for that.
Best seed of any state team here in either bracket.
Talk your
There's a
talk,
3
Kev.
seed.
Talk your
Shout out
talk.
to
There you
the
go.
LIV and company.
Like that. By the way, I like that T-shirt you're rocking too. Naptown Masters. What is that? Where'd you get that?
A little local flavor here.
Yeah.
Kind of spit on the traditional master shirt.
Yeah.
Shout out to the great city of Indianapolis.
Kind of like that. I'm just curious too. I'm listening to you do the We Grow Hair, and you got a great looking head of hair now, and no one ever sees it because you come in with ball cap every day.
Well,
how's that work?
After I shower.
Okay.
So you guys just don't fall on that list. Luckily,
go.
there's not many people that fall on that list, but
I was
you
about
three,
to say, hold up now.
you three would be some of the few.
James, I'm going to be moving over closer to you before it's all
Hey,
said
look.
and done. I don't know.
Well, actually, I have breaking news,
Yeah.
No.
and this is
Who are you breaking?
well, I'm not getting broken because my debts are now paid. I have paid up to Mark Dykton. He has
show the
3 of those
camera
over
that.
here. I'll show the camera real quick. This is what he wanted at 7 in the morning, people.
Yeah.
Andy Cap's hot fries. I found the biggest bag I could find.
That
the
is the
only
biggest
bag I could
bag I've ever
find.
seen.
So, yeah, the only person who's at risk of having their legs broken because they haven't paid up yet is Mr. Jeff Rickard here. So,
I'm
There you go.
trying.
He's got a few
I
days.
figure every day for the stuff he wanted. Every day that I delay giving him something, I feel like it's another day added to his life.
Just add a couple more boxes, basically.
I mean,
So
that's-
James and I are the well-behaved pledges in the
Yep.
fraternity, and
Yes,
Jeff Rickard
yes.
is the rebellion
If,
of the group.
if you ate one of those bags every day, how many years do you think you'd shorten your life by?
Oh,
I'd probably improve my life.
dang.
There's a comforting thought here this
I'd
Monday
probably
morning.
improve my life because
There you
I'll
go.
be able to handle the fire that comes with life.
There you go. There you go.
I don't know how you guys can put some of that stuff in your bodies. I don't know how that works.
Hey, we did 90s like childhood snacks. This was a childhood
There
snack.
you
It was
go.
close,
I mean,
near and dear to
look,
my
he's
heart.
not eating it every day. It's
No.
a once a year competition. So
I will down these on the road trip to Florida, and
There
I
you
will
go.
probably have to pull over a couple times. But I will do it. I will happily do it.
Pray for the backseat of that car.
I like that. All right. Kevin, where do you want to start today? As we get ready to check everybody down today, what do you want to do?
We'll start with the finest team and certainly the state of Indiana when it comes to the men's tournament. Purdue, again, a 4 seed in the bracket. They get High Point. What stood out to me about Purdue is they're in the Indy region. Obviously, they got to do their own thing in Providence here. Rounds 1 and 2, Clemson and McNeese. Talk about an Indiana coaching search matchup there. They would face the winner of that one. But if indeed they get through and the seeds hold, it would be Kelvin Sampson over at Lucas Oil Stadium a week from Friday. So I thought that's what stood out about Purdue. Sounds like Fletcher Lawyer will not practice today, will practice Wednesday. Again, Purdue is in the 12:40 time slot on Thursday. Matt Painter fully expects Fletcher Lawyer to play, but we've definitely talked about it here as of late. Purdue's got a thin margin for error, so Lawyer's availability and effectiveness pretty important because the big three was struggling, to say the least, on Friday night against Michigan.
All right, you talk about the men. As far as the women, we just mentioned everybody who's getting in there. Indiana is going into the 9-8 game. They'll be taking on Utah, and Ball State goes up against Ole Miss. Also, looks like a pretty good basketball game. What do you know about Ball State's women this year?
We got a lot of local flavor. They avenged both their MAC losses in their run to the championship game. Just a great story. Allie Becky, I know a lot of people felt like, from a transfer portal standpoint, she could have done that and decided not to. Stayed there. They will be, I think, Friday at 6 o'clock. So shout out to Brady Sallee, the Ball State coach. He's been there for a while. Their first tournament since 2009 there. Again, a good amount of local flavor. Avon, Roncalli represented as well. So chirp to the Ball State women. 6 o'clock coming up on Friday.
You mentioned Notre Dame. They'll be taking on Stephen F. Austin in their region at this point in time. All right, as far as the NBA is concerned, Pacers off last night. They lost to Milwaukee on the road Saturday night. They're a half game behind the Bucks because Milwaukee lost last night. They're a game ahead of Detroit in the Eastern Conference. They play at Minnesota tonight. And then if they get through the Minnesota game, guys, nice little homestand with Dallas, Brooklyn twice, Minnesota again, and a wounded Los Angeles Lakers team, James. Chance to get some things going here as Milwaukee goes on the road for a few.
yeah, we still don't know the status, obviously, of LeBron James. Will he be in that game? How much that'll factor in? But that's obviously a ways away. For now, it's trying to get back on track with what KB pointed out as a very banged-up Pacers team. Pascal Siakam set to miss his first game as a Pacer. And on top of that, you have, notable players, Tyrese Halliburton, Miles Turner, questionable for tonight's game. So we'll see where they are from just a health standpoint, not only a mindset standpoint to bounce back from what I thought was just a very weird game, and one where we expected it, KB, Giannis bounced back and did not play the passive brand that he did in the fourth quarter the other night.
He was 6 of 6 in the first quarter, and that I think kind of set the tone. It was Giannis being Giannis, which, to your point, James, we discussed a lot late last week. I don't want to make too much out of the individual Buck games in the sense of they were second nights of back-to-back for the Pacers.
Yeah, that's fair.
Obviously, it does hurt the team from a head-to-head standpoint. The bench is just weird. I mean, Damian Lillard said after the game, he's like, we're used to the Pacers bench being great, and they just got dominated on Saturday night up there. So
it went from like a 2-point game to like just 15.
Yeah, really
quickly.
snap of the fingers there early in the fourth quarter. So, again, probably the ugliest looking injury report for the Pacers all season tonight. No Siakam due to personal reasons. Halliburton, you said lower back, right, for him. So, again, it's been kind of a variety of things. And Nesmith and Turner, both questionable as well. So, we'll see how all that plays out. They will return home. Brooklyn twice here coming up later this week.
All right, high school basketball, a couple of highlights for you. In 4A, winners included Fishers and Lawrence North to advance. Brownsburg did lose 74-40 to Mount Vernon. Fishers will play South Bend Riley Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning in Elkhart. Lawrence North goes up against Terre Haute North at Newcastle. You were in Southport this weekend. What'd you see?
Yeah, first time there. It was a great gym. Got my typical picture with the caption, my love language is Indiana high school basketball, which it is. And, I saw a Mount Vernon team that was just dominant. I thought that Brownsburg obviously had a pretty fun season considering the end there to kind of go into the sectional under 500 to win your sectional, kind of upset some people. But then they ran into that buzzsaw that is Luke Ertl, the Purdue recruit, and his squad. And so the game was not close. It was 9-5 Brownsburg, and then Mount Vernon went on a 26-0 run. And they just put the hammer down on them. And so I'm excited to see them obviously face stiffer competition. Actually, I got to go home this weekend to Illinois, so maybe I'll make a trip over to the region and see some of those teams play. But I will find my way to a gym, whether it's in the central Indiana or northern Indiana, one way or another.
Like it. One more thing, too. Kevin, probably interests you as much as anybody. Players' Championship suspended to darkness yesterday. 2-man, 3-hole playoff today. Rory McIlroy, J.J. Spahn. They'll get going a little bit later on today. 3-hole aggregate. Rory had a chance to kind of close the door, missed a close birdie putt, I think, on 15 or 16, and Spahn just came back. He wouldn't go away. I don't know how much you watched of that.
J.J. Spahn on the edge of his seat about his Aztecs of San Diego State getting into the field, so this would be a life-changing W for J.J. Spahn. Obviously, Rory, a little bit of a different territory, but closing for Rory has been a bit of a question. So, yes, 9 a.m. today. 3-hole playoff there to decide the Players' Champion.
All right, coming up in just a moment, we'll talk a little bit about the Colts and free agency, where they stand, what people are saying. Also get you caught up to date on everything that's happening in the NCAA tournament field. If you're just waking up, just joining us on the way to work, thanks for being here. Along with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, I'm Jeff Rickard, Mark Dykton on the ones and twos. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Happy Monday. It's tournament time. Everybody in here is in a really good mood. I was such in a hurry to get here today, Mark. I had to go back and get my watch. I hadn't done anything yet. I just couldn't wait to see you guys this morning.
I believe it.
Let's talk about it. Let's get what's going on. We got NCAA tournament. You mentioned this kind of in passing a moment ago, but it really deserves more attention. 8 straight tournaments of being a top 4 seed or better for Purdue. No one else has ever done that, Kev.
They are double. I think the longest active right
4.
now is Arizona and Tennessee.
Yeah.
With 4. If you want to put that into perspective, Indiana's had 3 in the last 25 years.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to say it. I don't know if anybody's never done that before, but I know that that's amazing.
Purdue's got 8 straight. Indiana's got 3 in the last 25 years.
Make it 4 Boilermakers.
Purdue, right?
It's just there is an element, and I think this is probably the discussion more for
Make
me.
it 4 Boilermakers.
Last year on Monday of Selection Sunday, but I've long been a believer of this. So many people call the tournament a crapshoot, right? So many people say, boy, you look at your bracket right now and, good luck filling it out. I think it's like 10 of the last 11 Final Fours, we've had a 7 seed or worse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at your bracket right now and accurately pick the 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whoever it's going to be in the Final Four. So I am a huge believer in you just have to create quality darts at the dartboard. That's what you have to do. You never know when the right year is going to fall your way. You never, a lot of these teams, Cooper, Flagg, and Duke. I mean, a lot of these, you deal with injuries that arise. One bounce of the ball one way or the other. Boom. Look at the Virginia game in the Elite Eight a handful of years ago. That didn't go Purdue's way.
Oh, that still hurts me.
So what has happened since? They still have thrown every quality dart at the board. And sooner or later, yeah, Fairleigh Dickinson happened and St. Peter's happened, all that. But look at last year. Boom. They continue to create opportunities. And they go and run to the national title game. So what an accomplishment for Purdue to have 8 straight top 4 seeds. And I know a lot of the talk exiting yesterday, guys, was looking at Michigan. Michigan was the 5 seed, and they win the Big Ten tournament. To me, it's a crime the selection committee cannot factor in the Sunday championship games. Like,
too late.
Is that more their fault or the Big Ten's fault for having it on Sunday?
Well, it's probably both. I mean, hell, how many, can we have some contingency plans in place on the board? If, Michigan wins.
Supposedly we have the smartest people in college basketball in that room.
If Wisconsin wins. But again, I think you point to Purdue's non-conference schedule. And that's why they had, I think, a really favorable seed of, they have to go out to Providence, but they're in the Indy region. And again, when you have Alabama and A&M and Auburn and, Ole Miss and Marquette, and you have that type of non-conference schedule, that's why I think Purdue gets a little bit of a benefit. So I get that they're certainly not playing their best ball by any means of the season right now, but still, that's a damn quality accomplishment. 8 straight years as a top 4 seed.
James, the one big controversy in the NCAA tournament field right now for the men, North Carolina getting in. They've only got one quad 1 win. Everybody points to the fact that they were undefeated in quad 2, whatever. All I know is, yes, West Virginia has a big beef, I think, over North Carolina getting in. And to a smaller degree, they didn't really take care of the business they needed to during a tournament week in the Big Ten. But Indiana, I thought, had a much better overall body of work than North Carolina.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is when I was watching the selection show, and I'm curious to know what everyone else's reaction was. When they got in, I was like, all right, but like an 11 seed? That's when I was like, whoa, like that's kind of high considering their resume, especially with the narrative going into the ACC tournament, was that they probably weren't going to get in. And now they win a game, take dude down to the wire. Also, I know people might hate me for this. That was a good call on that lane violation, by the way.
It was a clear call.
I mean, it was very obvious. I remember seeing the headline and thinking, oh, like that's kind of bogus. And I watched it back, and I was like, oh, that makes total sense. It was a clear lane violation. It is what it is. But I say all that to say, them being an 11 seed with that resume just doesn't really sit right with me. And so I think it's a fair gripe for people to have to say, well, hey, your AD's on the committee chair, and yes, we know he was taken out of the room and he wasn't in there when they made the selections. But as KB pointed out, there's always that human bias. And so you be around people enough, and they might like you, by default or by just being around you. And so I understand the gripe there for both West Virginia especially, and then IU. I look at it like this, like play a harder schedule, non-con, and then also handle your business. Like we talked about this. They had chances. You beat Oregon one of the 2 times you faced them, you're probably in the tournament. It is what it is.
Kevin, look
one
around.
Of the 2 of the last few times,
Yeah.
but still.
Yeah. You look around the rest of the bracket as well. Some really interesting first-round games. Louisville-Creighton. Sign me up to watch that one.
Well, how about that being in Lexington? Now, that's not a Cardinal. That's a Blue Jay.
I mean, all birds are the same, right? I mean, I'm not deciphering bird
Hey,
calls
man,
here.
we're going to have some bird watchers.
The
calling in
ornithologists
are gonna
early
be
in the
calling
morning. They're going to stuff those hot fries right up your you-know-what.
Let's say there's
man.
cardinals and
continue
blue
to go there.
jays and all kinds of other birds in
You going
that
to play an
soundbite.
Oriole later? Do we have an Oriole in the field?
No.
How about that game being in Lexington? So you could have Auburn potentially playing Louisville in Lexington. I was a little struck by this. You had Louisville as an 8, Creighton as a 9. Both those teams got to the conference championship game of their respective conferences. And again, that could be Auburn, the number 1 overall seed. So I thought that was something that really stood out to me.
I think that speaks
Auburn
to
Tiger.
you look at the seeds, though, for the SEC teams and the Big Ten teams specifically. Those two conferences just filled up really the top 6, 7 seeds in a lot of places. It's
Yeah,
really good stuff.
14 from an SEC standpoint. I want to go back to the Indiana snub here, or people, again, calling for it.
So is it a snub?
Indiana snub. I don't think it is. Let me be clear. I think West Virginia's got the real gripe, not Indiana. Dan Gavitt, who kind of runs a lot of the tournament, or kind of I feel like people describe him as he runs college basketball. He's an NCAA employee.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get why he just doesn't oversee the entire committee. I'm fine with having ADs on the committee, but have Gavitt as the Bubba Cunningham, for example.
You would think so. I think their thought is we'll rotate guys so it's fair all the time.
So
but I'd rather
rotate
have,
the committee.
Right, I'd rather have a neutral guy.
Because if you look at it last year, what did you hear about Indiana State? Indiana State had great metrics, but not quad 1 wins. Well, what did you hear yesterday? North Carolina's got great metrics, but not quad 1 wins. So what is it?
Brand name?
Because that's where I get a little confused with that. And I just felt for Indiana State over the entire weekend because, something that helped Indiana, there was 1 bid steal. There were no bid stealings. Memphis won. VCU won. You didn't have your NC State storyline. Gonzaga won their conference tournament. You really didn't have, outside of maybe Colorado State, you did not have the amount of bid stealing as well. So I really felt for Indiana State. I know it's 365 days later. I probably should just get over it. By the way, we will get an Indiana State flavor in this play-in game coming up. What is that? Is that Wednesday, Xavier, Texas? You'll get Ryan Conwell, who's been just incredible for Xavier here as of late. He'll take on 2 of his former teammates, Julian Larry and Jason Kent, neither of whom are playing a ton for Texas, both coming off the bench. But that will be your second night of your play-in action over in Dayton.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to have my TV on. I'm going to be staying up late and watching all that stuff. Speaking of staying up late, I know you went to Southport on Saturday night, watched some really good high school basketball. My son turned 17 yesterday, and as promised, we watched the first 2 episodes of Better Call Saul last night.
Ooh.
So there you go.
Oh, so not Breaking Bad. Okay.
He was a little – well, I figure I want to –
Saving that for the 18th.
I feel like both of them get going in a very dark place pretty soon, but it feels like Breaking Bad goes a little darker sometimes. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about it.
Are you scared he's gonna get trapped in the darkness or something? What do we? What's the?
I don't want to be fascinated by the bad guys.
Well, I have high hopes that your son will not think hey, maybe I should make drugs as a side hustle.
He's going to break bad at 17. I'm
yeah.
in the basement cooking meth.
I was like,
something up in the locker today
All I
after
know
Buff High School.
Is when he was a kid and Cars 2 came out, he was a big fan of the lemons. He liked the lemons, not the heroes. So that worried me just a
lemons
little
and
bit.
What they were doing in Breaking Bad, a little bit of a jump. I just want to say.
Well, yeah, there's a jump between being 5 and 17 too. So that's how that goes. But no, he turned 17 yesterday.
Happy birthday to him, man.
It was a lot of fun. We had a good time. We spent some time together, and then my youngest and I hung out and had pizza and ice cream on Saturday night by ourselves. So it was a good weekend, Kev. You have all that kind of stuff to look forward to as your girls get older.
Sounds like
your boys and girls.
That sounds like a hell of a weekend right there.
I thought he was going to leave it at that. That sounds like hell. I was like, dang.
Probably good to finish the thought here. Rob Blackman, voice of the Boilers, going to join us here coming up at 9. We mentioned this a little bit earlier, but again, High Point, Purdue's opposition here round 1. They have the longest win streak in college basketball. They are led by a couple transfers, and obviously when you get to this time of year, you could say it about any team virtually, especially the mid-major teams. Probably one thing to point out, though, High Point has played absolutely no one. I think this will be the saving grace for Purdue as you get – because I get it. You got PTSD. Purdue struggled here. High Point's got the longest winning streak in college basketball. They're highly efficient offense, all of that. But they literally – it's one of the worst schedules you'll ever see. They had 1 quad 1 or 2 game the entire year. Purdue's had 27 of them. So I just think there's an element of like when the ball is tipped, not to sound like one shiny moment, Purdue's, studs will outperform High Point. And I know it's probably easier said than done, but like they have just not test whatsoever.
Just start well. Don't let teams like that think that they got a chance of the first 8-9 minutes, Kev.
Yeah, you don't want to get to those late media timeouts, and all of a sudden the neutral crowd in Providence, Rhode Island, is now all behind High Point.
Rooting for the
Clemson
upset.
McNeese showing up there, and they're all behind the Panthers of High Point there.
I don't want to be playing Panther sounds like I played Peacock sounds a few years ago.
Yeah.
I remember watching that game live. My goodness. But, yeah, I think that's the argument, though. It's like, well, remember what happened a couple years ago, so obviously you want to get out, start fast, and then I think just dominate them. I mean, you have the talent. You have the Big Ten Player of the Year. You have Trey Kaufman, who's also a stud. And so, as a competitor, you got to look across the yard a little bit and say, these guys can't hang with us.
PTSD, it's the same broadcasting crew as the Fairleigh Dickinson crew.
Oh, boy.
Here you go. See, I wasn't going to bring it up. I'll let everybody have a good morning.
Kev, High Point, their early season schedule before they even got into conference: Coppin State, Jackson State, North Carolina Central, UAB, American. They lost to Missouri State, Old Dominion, Hampton, Pfeiffer.
Who?
Yeah, I've
Michelle
never heard of Pfeiffer. Yeah. North Carolina, Greensboro, North Texas, App State, Carolina University, Southern Illinois, Norfolk State. So to your point, not a lot of big-time teams on that schedule there.
Yeah, an absolute joke, frankly, of a schedule there. So, again, that will be 12:40, game number 2. Creighton, Louisville is now what gets us started. I believe that's our first game coming up on Thursday.
And that's a great win to start with. Some of the other games that I like, just perusing through here, too. UConn, Oklahoma, I think is going to be a great first-round game. Kansas, Arkansas could be interesting.
How about the Patino Calipari potential?
I know. I like that. They know what they're doing when they set these things
So in
up.
that West region, St. John's is the 2 seed, Arkansas is the 10. I mean, in one pod, you have Rick Pitino, Bill Self, and John Calipari.
That's not a bad region right
The ego
there.
bracket, right?
And honestly, the happiest people in the world today? Our hospitality people here in the city of Indianapolis.
Oh, they're good.
If our seeds hold in the Midwest region, Houston, Purdue, Kentucky, and Tennessee. You think Lucas Oil Stadium will be a hot ticket come a week from Friday? And even if those don't hold, you still have Gonzaga. You still have Illinois. You could have a Texas or a Xavier get hot. You still have UCLA. Like, that is a loaded Midwest region from a fan base standpoint. I guess the Purdue fan base maybe won't need the amount of hotel rooms, but I think Kentucky, Tennessee, and Houston will be spending quite a lot. Something about Kelvin Sampson in the state capitol, too. Could be interesting.
I don't know. You certainly can't consider them a dark horse. But as I look at this, and I won't fill out my bracket for real until tomorrow evening, but I like Houston. I might like them to win the whole thing.
I mean, it's not a bad choice.
Yeah, I think a team that's won, baby, 26 or 27,
Cougars,
I don't think you call them a dark horse by any means.
No, but just they've always been knocking on the door they never quite get through.
And I want to say
like this could be the year.
This is their third straight, like number 1 seed or whatever. So they've been a very good program recently, and I like their style of play. They play like hyenas. They're just all over you all times of the game. It kind of reminds me of St. John's as well.
I don't know hyena sound. That was not a hyena sound.
That was not a hyena
Not a
request.
You could just go Lion King soundtrack there.
It's like
Ganja, maybe?
If we
hyena?
I do like that. Hey, good pull, KB.
If we mention Alabama, do we get an elephant sound later on? How does that work?
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
I got an elephant sound. Hold on. There it is.
There you go.
He's got them all lined up and ready to go.
It's just a matter of finding them. There's like 68 of them in here, so it's hard to find.
Anyway, I like that. So it's tournament week, and we're all excited about that and looking forward to that. In the meantime, I want to ask you guys a question when it comes to the National Football League. It's really interesting what Cincinnati is doing, and I don't know that we've ever quite seen this before. They've now committed $70 million per season for this upcoming season just to 2 wide receivers. In addition, they recently made Joe Burrow one of the highest-paid quarterbacks in the National Football League. All of their money is on that offensive side of the football, and specifically into 3 guys. KB, can you win in the National Football League if you don't put a bunch of your money onto the defensive side and they end up trading Trey Hendrickson, as they've talked about?
Man, Al Golden, their defensive coordinator, might want to come back to Notre Dame, right?
Man.
Will you let him?
Yeah, I will.
It's going to be interesting to watch, right? They just want to outscore everybody.
Yeah, and I think also we have to point out about Cincinnati, and James, I know you've probably followed this with Lou Anarumo's background here lately. they also have drafted horrifically on the defensive side of the ball here in the last 3-4 years. If you want to operate in the manner that they've operated in, Burrow, Chase, Higgins, of course, you better draft well. And they just haven't. So that defensive run they had, 2019, 2020, when they went to the AFC title game, when they went to the Super Bowl, okay, if you're going to sustain that, you need early impact from your draft picks. And they haven't gotten that at all. It still seems like, even with what they did late last night, and for those that missed it, again, the Chase and Higgins deal, both were announced late Sunday night. They still seem to be optimistic they can keep Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. I was following along with one of our guys at The Athletic who covers the Bengals for us, Paul Daner Jr., and Paul had like this little checklist, and, it seems like Trey Hendrickson is the last one for this team to check. And if they pull this off, that would be pretty impressive. I did read that, like, the way the contracts are structured, they're not, like, officially out as far as the total details, but the way they're structured, and because they're extensions, you're able to push some of the cap hit into the future. So this year, perhaps you can pay a guy like Trey Hendrickson and bring him back. I know Colts fans keep asking me about what is possible. Will they make a move for him? I don't really see it happening. I think it's a long shot. I think it always was. But, until it's done, I think it's one of those things where you're going to keep getting asked about it until he signs with some team. But it will be very impressive to see them kind of pull that off. And I think also, depending on how the deals are structured, it kind of speaks to the power Joe Burrow has to just make the Bengals spend cash. I mean, it's not to tie it back to the Colts, to tie it back to any team. I know when Lamar Jackson stuff was popping up, can the Colts go get him? It's like, well, do the Colts have enough money in liquid cash to pay this guy? Like, that's the difference, I think, sometimes is like, yeah, cap space is one thing, but just think about how much money someone has up front to pay. And so the Bengals, to push that money out there like that, I mean, they're committing to their quarterback and their offense, but, I mean, they're going to have to win a lot of games, scoring a lot of points. And we saw last year, you can win like that, but you can't win big like that. So I'm not sure exactly what they're doing.
Kevin, I'm curious, as we sit here today, what we saw during the big week of free agency last week, where do you stack teams in the AFC South right now?
Well, it's still Houston's division. Yeah, I think, anytime you have had C.J. Stroud win 2 playoff games in his first 2 seasons, you have to go there. Certainly they still have some questions, but, what they have with Nico Collins, what they have with Will Anderson Jr., Daniil Hunter still looked very much in his prime. Derek Stingley Jr. is a great corner. I mean,
Mixon looked great last year, too.
Yeah, Mixon certainly turned back the clock. Again, offensive line is probably their biggest question, and they are bringing in a new offensive coordinator. So that would be a question mark. But, yeah, I mean, you certainly would begin there with Houston. We should mention, I don't know how top of mind it is for a lot of Colts fans, but another one of their in-house guys did depart post-show for us on Friday. Kylan Granson to the Eagles. James, he was one of the most, and quarterback play had something to do with this, definitely, but even, Mo Alley Cox, Drew Ogletree, even those other guys wouldn't have qualified. Most unreliable tight ends of any in the nation, or in the entire NFL last year in terms of targets and how much he caught those. So he was a guy that played about 50% of your snaps, though, right around there. So you want to talk about open playing time at tight end. I think we all knew the need was there no matter what you did with Granson, but he now heads to Philly with Nick Sirianni and company on a 1-year deal.
And we all wait to find out what Aaron Rodgers wants to do with his future and who he's going to play for, or if he plays at all. James, how long is this going to go on?
Who gives a rip?
I was going to say, I don't know how many people care just because I don't know if that's Mark's. He's got his green and yellow on, so maybe
this is an Oregon shirt, though. Let's be
I'm just checking. I'm just checking. But, I mean, I look at it like this, man. This is just what he does to perhaps gain leverage. I mean, I don't know why Minnesota will make this move unless they're trying to go all in on the championship with him. Because to me, if you get him and you don't play J.J. McCarthy, then you're going to go into year 3 not knowing what you had in your first-round pick at quarterback. That's probably a worse situation than with Anthony right now. Like, you've seen Anthony play some. To have a guy going into year 3 who was one of your top picks not play at all at the most important position in the sport, I mean, that's a hard pill to swallow, especially if it doesn't work out. Like, imagine doing that, going to get Aaron Rodgers, and then you don't win big. Then what? So I don't see it happening, but, I mean, he's got, I guess, all the answers, or at least at this point, he's got a little bit of leverage.
Anything else going on in the NFL that really struck you over the last couple of days, KB?
Yeah, I'd add he's got a little bit of an ego, too, along with a little bit of a...
Did you like that picture of him walking the beach in the blanket there?
Yeah, from a leverage standpoint. I mean, I felt like it was a pretty quiet weekend. Of course, the Chase and Higgins news, will dominate the headlines today, but I don't know. Unless I'm missing something, Hendrickson, needs to play out. Again, Rodgers and Wilson will inevitably just draw headlines because of their, careers.
Oh, this was funny. I mean, the Myles Garrett, it's not about money thing, when he re-signed there, I was just like, huh? He got his extension, and he's like, you know what? It's not about money. It's about winning still. And I'm like, oh, to sit up there and lie, I love it. I mean, yes, I know he wants to win, but you can lose when you get $100 million in the bank.
Yeah, I beg to differ on that. But it does seem like we are about to enter a little bit of a quiet period. And James, what is it? Is it a week from today you'll be down, or is it 2 weeks from today you'll be down?
2 weeks. Yeah, down March 30th. I'll be down in Palm Beach, Florida. Not staying where they're staying because it's $2,600 a night.
You're not in the penthouse of the Breakers?
No, I'm not in but I will be on the outskirts of the Breakers.
I've
and
been
on
to a
the
few
grounds.
NFL owners meetings, and every time I show up to the hotel, I'm always like, just don't touch anything, Kevin.
Yeah. I feel like I can hear my grandma telling me, like, boy, if you touch anything, you break it, you buy
I
it.
walk in
and I
the
can't buy nothing up in
straightest
there.
line of the lobby. I don't even move. I'm just one square of carpet in front of the other is how I'm walking in there. But we could or should, I guess, enter a bit of a quiet period now in terms of the NFL. Again, the Colts still have cap space. They can still continue to hit a few of those singles that we've seen them hit in free agency. They actually do have room to do a bigger move if they would like.
You're looking at linebacker, offensive line if they do something like that?
I'm still going to beat defensive line a little bit more. And again, they got the 14th overall pick, so we'll see how that plays out. But linebacker is, I think, a position worth bringing up. I don't know. I might be in the minority on this, but I thought the linebacker group was one of the more disappointing groups for the Colts last season. And
I would agree.
Zaire Franklin was a Pro Bowler, but I don't know.
Second team All-Pro as well.
I don't know. I had a little bit of a higher standard for that linebacker duo than what you got. So, again, EJ Speed's a free agent. So that domino will have to play out. So we should be entering a little bit of a quieter period.
I'll take it.
Which is just fine by me because I want to be all hoops here for the next 2 weeks.
Does him still being a free agent mean anything? Like, is he just not getting offers right now, or Colts just waiting to see if they can match?
What's difficult about Speed, and James, you know this quite well, he was thought of as a special teams guy.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, Shaq Leonard looks like me, and they just kind of threw EJ Speed in there.
Right.
And last year was his only time he's been a full-time starter. And I didn't think it went, I didn't think Speed was great last year. I also don't think it was utterly horrific. So now the question becomes, do you just give that starting job to Jalen Carlisle, who was your 5th-round pick from last year, or do you go out and create a little bit of competition there? So I think with Speed, it's probably, is he a special teamer or is he a starter? And then he's a little older, is he not? Is he?
He's 29, going on 30 this summer.
He was one of the few older draft picks the Colts have made.
Yes, that kind of not blew me away, but kind of surprised me a little bit when you're looking at contracts. Is this time of year, Jeff, I'm always looking at ages. You say this guy's, he's 25, but then you're like, well, he'll be 26 by the time the season starts and things like that. So I think with EJ, I think, kind of exceeded expectations from where he was drafted to his role expanding. But now that you have those expanded expectations, you have to rise to that level of play. And if that isn't the case, then maybe you still have to upgrade at that position. So we'll see what his market looks like as he continues to wait. But at the same time, I wouldn't expect the Colts to necessarily be waiting on him. I think this is a situation where they can upgrade via the draft or go out and get somebody who, again, is perhaps a little bit more proven as a starter because, as KB pointed out, that was his first time as a full-time starter. There were some highs, but I think there was a little bit more lows than highs last year, particularly in coverage. I mean, that's where they got picked on the most, middle of the field. Part of that could be scheme, but at the same time, personnel matters too.
All right, coming up in just a moment, we'll continue to talk about the Colts free agency, but we'll also turn our attention back to March Madness. The NCAA tournament fields have been announced. We'll tell you all about that, give you our thoughts on Indiana not making the field as we continue on the Fan Morning Show, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
And I wish I was at the Golden Ace cheersing on this St. Patrick's Day Monday. Mark Dykton, some great Irish-related re-entries here. I'm holding the bracket like I was holding my firstborn back a handful of years ago. Hopefully,
So this is the feeling I've been missing.
Hopefully, Maddie is still asleep, or certainly not in her car at this point if she hears that comment.
You keep like burping it too, which is very odd.
Yeah, I know. Just right over my right shoulder. It's become my dominant shoulder here. Mark Dykton. The bracket looks beautiful, glorious.
It's perfect right now.
It is.
Isn't that like, you know,
everybody's a winner.
Yeah, nobody's X'd out just yet. It's so pristine.
It's again our regional sites: Atlanta, San Francisco, Newark, and Indy. If the seeds hold here in Indianapolis, you'd be having Kelvin Sampson against Matt Painter, and you'd have Kentucky's Mark Pope against Rick Barnes in Tennessee. Wow.
You guys ever start filling out brackets and you're like, no, this is too chalky. I don't like it. And you like start over.
Yes.
You got to go like 80% chalk, though. That's what's going to win it for you.
I know, but I feel like going through it, I'm just like,
Like when you start ending up when each region has like the 1, 2, 3, and 4s, you're like, no, we got to start over here.
Yeah.
Well, I saw
There's always like a 7th seed, though, right?
They flashed it. Yeah, I mentioned this in the opening hour. We have had one team seeded 7 or worse has reached the Final Four in 10 of 11 years. 10 of the last 11 years. I think we've only had one Elite 8 in the past 14 where we've had all 1 seeds. So in all likelihood, one of these 1 seeds, Auburn, Duke, Florida, Houston, will not get to the Elite 8. So I think that's what certainly makes it difficult. Purdue will open up the tournament early. 7.5-point favorite over High Point coming up on Thursday.
12:40 tip.
Get out the TV guide right now.
True TV.
True TV there for the Boilers.
They get all my money at this month. I never return there. I don't even know how to find the channel until it gets to March Madness.
And then you forget again. Here are the 7 seeds, just out of curiosity for what we were just talking about. UCLA is a 7 seed. St. Mary's is a 7 seed. Kansas is a 7 seed. And then Marquette is a 7 seed. Just
Kansas with the Kokomo product.
Yeah.
Flory Badinga.
Yeah, from a local
Golden
flight.
Eagles.
From a
I don't know if that was a Jayhawk or a Golden Eagle.
No.
That sounded great, Mark.
I do love Indy Star does that. The local angle, Kevin.
Yeah,
where
I
they-
know we got Charlie Williams from Carmel with Lipscomb. Honestly, a local angle here with High Point. Alan Huss, their head coach, was at La Lumiere, actually coached Rayfield Davis. So Matt Painter's like, I've watched this dude coach in high school. And he was at Culver, honestly, before, or ironically, I should say, before Mark Galloway, Trey Galloway's dad, took over there at Culver. So I don't think there's as much local flavor from an individual standpoint in the bracket as we're used to. We mentioned the Indiana State-centric playing game coming up on a Wednesday night, Xavier with Ryan Conwell, and then Julian Larry and Jason Kent both playing for Texas there. But, yeah, James, unfortunately not as much as I selfishly would like.
Yeah, but I do like when
Shout out
Indy.
to Bryce Drew, by the way.
Yeah.
4 out of 5 tournaments with Grand Canyon.
That's impressive. But I would say I like when Indy Star does that story.
Grand Canyon.
Is that a loper?
I was like, I hope they stay alive out there in the Grand Canyon. But I like that they do the story where they break down, which team has which players from the state or which coaches from the state. And it kind of just lets you know that, again, there's always that local tie when it comes to watching some of the teams. And honestly, this is my gripe with the NCAA tournament, not even a bad one, but I'll read all these stories about, where they're from or how they got there, whether it's a coach or a player or some small program. And then I end up being like, dang, I want them to win. But then this kid has a great story too. And I just get to the point where I'm like, well, everybody can't win. So then I just make the bracket and let the basketball guys figure it out.
The gripe for Indiana. How pissed off
on a scale of 1 to 10,
IU
rank
fans
them.
should be today.
3.
Where you at, Mark? What scale of 1 to 10?
For
Snubbed
feeling
one?
bad for Indiana?
Not bad, but like, were they snubbed 1 to 10?
A 2. You can't lose that many games and just like, well, we lost a lot of close games. No. Get out of here. You had so many opportunities and you blew every one of them.
I thought they had an opportunity to win a game or 2 in the Big Ten tournament, and that went by the wayside, too.
Yeah. Where you at, KB?
You
Scale
got
1 to 10?
eliminated immediately.
Well, I kind of go back to our debate in the opening hour. I'll go back to last summer. Mike Woodson created the bed that they have to lie in right now with this non-conference schedule. When you do that, you create a ton of picking. And metrically, that's what I think really hurt Indiana. I mean, you look at it, North Carolina's like 18 spots ahead of them in the net. Well, why? Well, look at North Carolina's non-conference schedule versus Indiana. Like, you can choose that. You can't choose your conference schedule. Your conference schedule is whatever your conference schedule is going to be. The non-conference is what you can choose. And Indiana had scheduled, I thought, very well in the first few years of Mike Woodson. But what did Mike Woodson think coming into this year? I'm on the hot seat, and I need wins. I don't care what they look like. So, yes, they had the little Bahamas tournament. Obviously got thoroughly played off the floor in the 2 games that mattered, Louisville and Gonzaga. And then outside of that, a home game against South Carolina was it from a non-conference standpoint. So I think once that happened, you left yourself super susceptible to what we just saw transpire. And the real gripe is West Virginia. I mean, 6 quad 1 wins, 5 of them away from home. They did challenge themselves to a degree in the non-conference schedule. They should be the one. Them over North Carolina, I feel like, is the real. Xavier, you can get into a little bit of Zach Fremantle, their big guy, missed a couple of their biggest games of the season. Again, non-conference-wise, they did a little bit there. But the real one for me is West Virginia over North Carolina.
Yeah, I'd probably give on the scale of like 1 to they really got snubbed.
And let's be honest, we're debating flawed resumes with all these teams.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that part of why we love March Madness?
Yes, you get down to that part, and everybody is just hopeful to get in.
Yeah, this reminds me of like the college football playoff debate. It's like, who should be in, who should be out. I think that's
but
part
obviously
of
college
it.
football debate is a little bit of a higher standard.
Absolutely.
It's 12 versus 68.
100%. But I'm just saying, like the narrative is like you can never necessarily get it perfect because there isn't an exact science. That was basically the point I was making. You got different leagues, different resumes, how you schedule, all those things kind of factoring in. And the bottom line is every year there's always going to be 3 or 4 that are like, man, we should have been over this team. Our resume is better. So
and I tweeted this out yesterday. The debate over Indiana being Team 68 or whatever, they should have been in Dayton, it just covers up the bigger story. The bigger story is no college basketball fan base invests more and gets less return than Indiana University fans. None.
Can you expand on that? I saw you tweeted this yesterday, and I thought it was spot on.
When you think about how much money they put in from an NIL standpoint, the crowds that routinely show up, that's a 17,000-seat venue.
And they're ready to go every game.
The resources that they have from a facility standpoint, 95 to 98% of college basketball programs would dream to have that trifecta going for them. The money, the care of fans, and the resources. They're in one of the major conferences if you want to go to that level as well. And it's just such a joke. If you are in the James Boyd, how old are you?
29.
If you're in the James, hell, even my age bracket, but certainly the James Boyd age bracket, you're used to Indiana as just a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten team.
I don't say this as disrespect. That is my experience. That's why I asked you guys, like, how was it? Because, growing up, it was just like, all right, IU's going to be okay. They're going to get into the tournament every now and then. But as we said, what was it, like 5 of the last 7 they haven't been in it?
So you were born
tough.
in 95. It's probably not all the way back to you, but, like, let's say this. If you play basketball at Indiana University right now and you're 21 years old, you're used to Indiana not being in the tournament more than being in the tournament. Like, that's the reality. Go back to the Purdue stat we said to lead off the show. I think it's an unbelievable stat that Purdue has had 8 straight tournaments as a top 4 seed. Indiana's had 3 top 4 seeds in the last 25 years. 3 times in the last 25 years, they're a top 4. I mean, like, I'm not saying number 1 seed. I'm not saying number 2 seed, a top 4 seed. Look at how many Big Ten teams are a top 4 seed, for example, this year or in, past years. And Indiana's had it 3 times in 25 years. So, and I largely think most of the Indiana fan base is like, yeah, we sadly know this. We're on to the coaching search. But, when that debate, bubbled to the surface yesterday, to me, it was just more of a, damn, this is just one more year where this program, which invests so much from a fan base standpoint, you've had nearly the double the amount of missed tournaments versus made tournaments since Kelvin Sampson.
And I don't want to relitigate all of this, but Tom Crean did get him to some Sweet 16s, and that wasn't good enough. And so they go on to Archie, and that doesn't work out well at all. They go on to Mike Woodson. That really doesn't work out well at all. And now they're hoping to find that next person that can get them back into what they hope will be a Purdue-type sphere when they get this new coach and get down the road, because they are competitive with NIL. All the things you talk about, Kevin, people do show up. They still care. They're in a great conference. All those things are still right there. I would still think this would be a very attractive job to just about anybody.
Yeah, and I guess I want to be clear, too, because I think we got in this debate a little bit late last week. Like, I think the expectations of wanting more than missed tournaments versus made tournaments is just fine. Like people are like, oh my gosh, these Indiana fans are so unrealistic with their expectations. I don't hear like this demand of banner 6 has got to be there tomorrow. I think they want to pick up this piece of paper and see their team on it more often than they have been over the last 20 years.
That's very fair. And
that,
then
to me, seems super realistic.
Reasonable.
to piggyback off that thought too as well. I mean, I've made a great season for myself just going to all these different high school gyms, seeing all the talent in the state, and it's like, man, you see so much talent in the state as far as basketball, and you just wonder why aren't there better teams down there in Bloomington if you are the flagship program. I get it, Purdue's obviously in that conversation as well, but I'm just saying, like, that's part of it. Also, the transfer portal. You transferred for some guys, or you had some guys transfer in. They didn't really respond. Is that more an indictment on you and your staff and the development of those players, or just you scouting them in general? I mean, you didn't really get the return on investment when it comes to some of these players. And so, to me, that's a big part of it. I know it's a different landscape now. I think building now and trying to sustain success now is a lot harder. And honestly, Purdue's kind of an anomaly where, like, their guys stay. They have no reason to really leave to a certain extent. But that, to me, is pretty hard. Like, there's so much talent in this state. You mean to tell me you can't field a team that makes it to the tournament every year? Like, that's tough.
Yeah, and I also don't agree with, some of this debate about, leaving Archie Miller versus leaving Mike Woodson, that the program is in some worldly better place. It's still a program that can't shoot. It's still a team that is living and dying on the bubble on an annual basis. There's no young pipeline of players to turn to, and it's no idea of how to put the college basketball roster puzzle together, which I think is something that Matt Painter's accomplished really, really well, and other coaches have. And that's the question for whoever this next coach is going to be. So, I don't know. I just thought yesterday was, for IU fans' sake, probably they hope just like the nail in the coffin on this entire era.
So, someone told me they want to put the season down like Old Yeller.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that's a tad graphic, but honestly, I can hear that out.
It's. I mean, realistically, and I love some of my friends. They're very honest about this. They're like, what we missed out on? Hate watching IU when they, inevitably lose to some team they probably shouldn't have been playing anyway, or didn't properly have the type of performance they needed. So, I mean, what were you really going to get other than getting in?
I get that, but I also can sit here and just, it's still, I don't want to act like it's some grand accomplishment, but there is just that little bit of life for your fan base of like, man.
Yeah. I don't want to. No, I'm not saying I'm dunking on that. I mean, in general, they're like, well, to cope with it is what I'm saying. Like, you want to get in, but okay, I'll cope with it.
Do we need another watch of 40 minutes of shooting 50% from the foul line, 30% from three, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah.
Again, Purdue will get things started from an Indiana standpoint here coming up. 12:40, that is True TV on Thursday there, and Indiana fans might be paying attention to the game opposite Purdue in that same region. That would be Clemson. Brad Brownell, of course, taking on McNeese and Will Wade.
All right, so in case you're wondering, here are the latest odds on who will be the next Hoosier head coach.
Ooh, okay.
Greg McDermott, 1-2, minus 200 right now. Ben McCollum, who you mentioned, 9-4 at plus 225. Brad Brownell is third at 5-1. Chris Beard at 6-1. Will Wade at 7-1. And yes, Steve Alford in there at 17-2 or plus 850.
Is Steve Alford on that list just because of his ties to Indiana?
Probably.
I always think about the Steve Alford Inn when I drive past it to go to Newcastle every year for high school basketball. I don't know if he's the answer, but
are those rooms like triple this weekend with semi-state action?
I mean, they might. I drive past it, and there's always a lot of cars there. Some people don't want to make the drive back to Indianapolis, but I mean, who on that list to you all stands out? I mean, I always go back to like what's realistic. I don't know what's realistic until it happens. I never want to be like, oh, this guy's like out of the question, save for like Brant Stevens. But I feel like there are some decent options there. And I know Greg McDermott can coach.
I like Brad Brownell. I don't know if he's going to get the job, but I think he's a terrific college basketball coach.
I feel like he's on the bubble every year.
Yeah,
now
I was going to say.
He's on the hot seat every year, and now he's IU's coach.
Well, he's on the hot seat because of a lot of expectations out there, too.
Expectations for Clemson basketball?
Well, yeah, because you got to play against, and that's the thing, you got to play against Duke, North Carolina every year.
No, the ACC hasn't been your older brother's ACC lately.
But those two teams have been good. I mean, they've made recent appearances in the Final Four and championship games.
Is there a hesitancy to go with like the mid-major coach who's dominated, because Ben McCollum has done well.
I wouldn't be mad.
I know,
but I hear your point, James. I mean, 1 year at Division I and Drake is different than I said to you on Friday. I mean, you take the job at Bloomington and you bring your baby into Buffalo Louis and people want to sign the baby. Or they want you to sign their baby, probably is the better way to put it. So,
of that list, who do you think the fan base wants?
Oh, it's hard. I mean, he's trying to get you jumped after the show.
You run that poll, and then if Mark puts D, none of the above, then it's going to be D.
Well, I mean, you got Patino and Donovan are both 40-1. That's
that's as good a chance as me playing Augusta National tomorrow.
Yeah. Just curious.
I don't think this search is unfold. If those are the names, and again, who knows? Maybe Scott Dolson has somebody a little bit more under the radar. I don't think those are the names that Indiana fans were clamoring for 2 months ago.
It's tough, man. And then, like we talked about, you're going from being in certain instances where most of these coaches were had success elsewhere, but you come to IU is different. You're gonna get slammed with media obligations. You're gonna slam by us if you don't win, and so you got to be mentally strong as well as the X's and O's to deal with what comes with it, and also embrace it. Because it is, I don't want to make it seem like it's a bad thing. It's kind of a privilege to have that pressure, those resources, that expectation to come in and be a part of that program, which, again, I'm reminded of as an Illinois grad, has national championships, and mine does not.
Are Hoosiers fans kind of, this is very 76ers-like, but are they trusting the process because the hiring firm that found Kurt Cignetti is on this coaching search for basketball?
I mean, I did get the comment like, hey, can Coach Sig just come on over and coach basketball in the offseason? I was like, do you guys want this guy to rest at all?
I know.
He could do what Tony Hinkle did back in the day.
There we go.
I did think Michigan got a rough draw. First off, you look at where they were heading into the Big Ten tournament. They had a ton of quad one wins to begin with. They run through the Big Ten tournament. They win it. Not only to get the 5 seed, they get sent to Denver for the first 2 rounds. They get a 30-win UC San Diego team. Guys, they're a 2.5-point favorite in round 1.
Should they have been higher than Purdue? I know we talked about the 4.
I mean, Purdue did a lot in the non-conference.
Fair, that's fair.
Like from a scheduling standpoint, and I don't want to lose sight of that, but I don't know. I would certainly have to take a closer look at some of these resumes here. Like Texas A&M as a 4. So it's Arizona as the 4 in that East region. Is that right? I probably have to take a closer look at that. But if you're going to give Michigan a 5, at least give them a little bit of benefit out of to where they're in Cleveland the first 2 rounds or Milwaukee the first 2 rounds. That isn't of benefit to them. Even if they get to the Sweet 16, guys, they go to Atlanta, whereas Purdue goes to Indy. So I don't know. I thought Dusty May's bunch got kind of a raw deal.
I never know exactly what the committee wants from a conference tournament, because sometimes somebody will make a run through the conference tournament and they really bolt up through the seeds. And then you see what Michigan did, and Michigan had a pretty solid regular season as well. It's not like they were, to me, they're at least a 4 seed, but what do I know? We're just 3 guys sitting here talking on the radio right now.
Rob Blackman, voice of the Boilers, Purdue and High Point, the longest winning streak in college basketball, the High Point Panthers, coming up Thursday at 12:40. We'll get to our GOATs of the weekend as well. Mark Dykton, let's hit a morning checkdown. Put the brackets on the back burner for just a second. Tonight up in Minneapolis, actually for the first time all year, the Pacers will take on Minnesota. They are a 7.5-point underdog to the T-Wolves. What stands out to you about Minnesota is this: they haven't lost in March. Anthony Edwards had 41 last night. Their starters didn't play that much, frankly, in the first night of a back-to-back. But James Boyd, more importantly for the Pacers, no Pascal Siakam. He will miss his first game as a Pacer due to personal reasons. Certainly thinking about everybody with his family, and Tyrese Halliburton, Miles Turner, and Aaron Nesmith, all questionable. I would say the ugliest looking injury report of the season.
Yeah, that's a huge factor. And obviously, as we get down to the wire, you want to try to get healthier as you get prepared for the playoffs.
That, of course, comes your way 7:30 here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan with the great Mark Boyle. Looking forward to that. Do you want to get back to the NCAA tournament now? We talk about seeds. It is no Indiana, but there is Purdue getting in as a 4 seed. They'll take on High Point. A team that you were not impressed by their resume despite walking through their conference.
No, and again, I mean, they are a tremendous offensive team. They've got a couple transfers, Texas Tech and Mississippi State, Texas Tech guard and the Mississippi State 6'8" forward that are, kind of two of their catalysts there. They haven't lost since January 16th. I think those are all things worth pointing out, but it's also worth pointing out they have played nobody. Nobody.
They're going to clip this and say that this Kevin Bowen guy doesn't believe in us. Bulletin board material.
If you look at their schedule, they have played one quad 1 and quad 2 team all season long. I think Purdue's played 27 such games. So, again, they're not seeing a lot of Braden Smiths and Trey Kaufman-Renz on their schedule here. So, we'll obviously see about the availability of Fletcher Lawyer. Matt Painter said yesterday Lawyer will not practice today. The hope is for him, though, to practice on Wednesday and play Thursday. I don't know if fans, for some reason, didn't stay up on Friday night. That looked ugly. I mean, that's a brace of the fall with the left hand, and he said elbow strain, the official injury assessment on that. And, James, we've talked about it. Margin for error with the Boilers, it's slim. An injured Fletcher Lawyer, and, yeah, we could be talking about a Purdue team that's done by, 3 o'clock on Thursday.
Ooh, let's hope not. Feel like I'm in Noah's Ark this morning. Women's tournament bracket is out. Indiana in the 8-9 game. They'll be taking on Utah. Notre Dame, though, Kevin, you're impressed by them. You've watched them several times. You think they can make a run as a 3 seed.
I thought it was a joke they got a 3. They deserved a 2, but they will see potentially Haley Van Lith and trying to get some revenge on TCU coming up in the Sweet 16. I love their backcourt.
I was going to say, real quick, they have probably the best backcourt in the country. And, that program has been great year in and year out now as of late. So I expect them to go on a run. They have a chance to win the thing. Seriously. It's wide open on the women's side, I believe.
Hannah Hidalgo, Olivia Miles, the two in the backcourt there. And chirp, chirp, shout out Dill Street, shout out Ball State. Mark Dykton, give us a little Cardinal action here. Sure. The Ball State women, for the first time since 2009, they're in the sneaky 12 seed spot.
Yeah, taking on Ole Miss over there in Waco in the first round.
Great year. They've had a really nice run here as of late, and a lot of local flavor to their roster, which I love as well. Allie Becky's been an absolutely outstanding player, the MAC Player of the Year from Brownsburg. They've got Avon Roncalli flavor on their roster, so Brady Sally's been their coach there for a while. They avenged both their MAC losses in the tournament, one on Saturday, in defeating, I think it was Toledo, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in the title game.
All right, coming up in just a moment, we talk more about the Colts. A former Colt player said some interesting things about not just his new team, but maybe throwing a little shade at his old team as well. We'll talk about that. Rob Blackman comes your way at the top of the hour at 9 o'clock. It's Kevin Bowen. It's James Boyd, Mark Dykton, Jeff Rickard. It's the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Our Purdue voice, Rob Blackman, going to join us coming up at 9 o'clock. Again, it'll be an early one for Purdue fans on Thursday. They are the second game of the entire tournament, 12:40. For some reason, I feel like they've been a late Friday team here in recent opening rounds. So good news is if you win, you can kick your feet up and rest for about 48 hours there. 12:40, Purdue and High Point coming up on Thursday. The Pacers in the Central Time Zone tonight. The Minnesota Timberwolves. What'd you make of Saturday night, James Boyd? The bench certainly an issue, and the Bucks win the season series over the Pacers. What was just kind of a potentially a wild finish there. Pacers were down like 20 at one point and almost sent it to overtime.
Yeah, they rallied well, but I just thought that the non-Tyrese, non-Pascal minutes were rough. And then you see some of the struggles. Just you need Benedict Mathurin obviously be a little bit more effective. Minus 34 in his 12 minutes. TJ McConnell hasn't been the TJ McConnell that we saw this year. I know they extended him, and he hasn't looked like himself. Maybe part of that is the ankle that he's kind of playing through. I thought Thomas Bryant was rough as well. And so, just again, that bench production or lack thereof really hurt them. And then on top of that, maybe that's why Miles is questionable. He had a rough game shooting-wise, 4 of 13, and that's just not like him. 2 of 10 on three-pointers. I probably don't want him taking 10 threes at all, really. In most guys, he can shoot them. But 2 of 10 for your 7-footer, I'd like to see him get a little closer to the rim, especially if he's off like that to get a rhythm and get some buckets. He's questionable, I believe, like a left hip flexor or something like that he's dealing with.
He was rough Tuesday, too. He was really poor in both these matchups with them. But, yeah, the injury report's probably the big storyline tonight. Yeah, no Pascal Siakam, personal matter. This is his first game missed as a Pacer. Halliburton questionable lower back. As James said, Miles Turner questionable, and Aaron Nesmith as well. That's left ankle management. We haven't seen Nesmith miss too many games since his return.
He's actually playing very well as of late.
Yeah, he was great.
At 30, I think it's
Saturday
career high.
Night. Again, Minnesota did play last night. They're trying to get out of the play-in. The T-Wolves are right there in the West. That's what they're playing for right now. They haven't lost here in March. So I think you add it all up. I get it's the second night of a back-to-back for them, but on paper, this doesn't look great for the Pacers.
It's a tough one, but you look at Milwaukee, too, and what they can do when their guys get it going. The Pacers play great team basketball, and Tyrese Halliburton has been fantastic, obviously, with the assist-to-turnover ratio, and he can score as well. But Antetokounmpo, there were times, when he goes to the basket, starting from about 14, 15 feet out near the free throw line, his grace and power at the same time, some of the spin moves that he makes, the ability to get to the basket. And then when you got Dame Lillard, who's going, gangbusters from three-point range, they're tough to beat. They had a couple of guys going for threes, and yet the Pacers hung in there in the fourth quarter. The bench really hurt them, but when they're all right, that's not a bad Milwaukee team.
I mean, Milwaukee won the game because of Giannis and Lillard, but they also got some key bench performances. I thought Gary Trent Jr. and Kevin Porter Jr., I mean, that's, I think, a sneaky acquisition for them. I know he maybe brings a tad bit of crazy, but, in a way, coming off the bench, that can be some good crazy at times. So those will be names that, if and when these teams meet in the playoffs, that we'll certainly get used to here. So the Bucks did lose last night. They will now go on the road for 5 straight. So the Pacers, on paper, they do have a schedule after tonight where you got Brooklyn. You got a ton of home games here to close out the regular season. By no means is it over, of course, to get the 4 seed. Hell, you're, I think, just a half game behind them right now. But you did lose a head-to-head tiebreaker on Saturday night.
Scored 35-18 on the bench the other night. That's going to be tough.
And that should be a strength. I didn't think Carlisle went too hockey subby. I didn't think it was all 5 all of a sudden in there, but nonetheless, I think there are some questions from a rotational standpoint. And we'll see about Rick tomorrow. Maybe it might have to be 9 o'clock again, just with them playing late tonight up in Minnesota.
Real quick, I know one of the quotes that kind of went viral over the weekend was Alex Golden, who's always on with us from Setting the Pace, his podcast. He clipped this interview from halftime with Jenny Busek, the Pacers assistant, and she was quoted as saying, "We can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but for whatever reason, it's hard for our team to get up for teams that have a lot of guys out, and we're not a team that can just show up and beat teams." And so that was the Sixers game. And the
Friday night game,
yeah. And so, again, I think that's part of it, too, is I know they ended up winning that game, but it's like they play to the level of their competition. So they're always in the game. But I haven't seen that dominant Pacers performance. And granted, obviously, like you said, Milwaukee's a good team, Jeff. But we haven't seen them impose their will on somebody, I believe, in a little while here.
It's been a minute. They did in that second. It was certainly for, the end of the third quarter through about 4 minutes to go in the game they did on Indiana the other night.
Yeah, exactly. So I would like to see Indiana flip the script and again, kind of flex their muscle. Like, you were the team that got to the conference finals last year. Everyone's telling you it was a fluke, and you got to go out there and prove it wasn't. And so I would like to see them sort of show that or take that personal. And I'm sure they have, but I think as of late, they just haven't really played their highest brand of basketball. And we'll see if that can change, here as we, again, get down to the wire. You want to be peaking at the right time, as they say. To me, that's kind of a cliche. You want to be peaking all the time, but realistically, you want to make sure you're playing better basketball, I guess, now than you are the last few games.
8 o'clock tonight for the Pacers and T-Wolves. I don't know if you guys saw this graphic thrown up over the weekend, but, it's probably right after St. John's won the Big East title. The Rick Pitino stats in taking over the, handful of programs that he has, and what that program did the year prior versus what they did 1 year into Rick's tenure and then 2 years into Rick's tenure. It's incredible. I mean, these are 10, 12, 13-win programs when he takes them over. And then, boom, within 1 or 2 years, they're winning 20 games in the NCAA tournament. 30 this year for St. John's. They are the 2 seed out west. Is that your most open region when you look at it?
Just on a cursory glance, I've only looked at it a couple of times last night and this morning. It's wide open, but because of that and because of all the things you talk about and his experience in tournament games, it's going to be hard to bet against him no matter who they're playing in that field, don't you think?
He was talking with Nick Gardner, Butler's color guy, a couple weeks ago, just about St. John's. And, one thing, obviously, they've won 30 games. I mean, that's absurd. But they don't really shoot the 3 ball very well. So, will that be any sort of issue for them? Again, they won 30, so it's probably foolish to nitpick them too much here. But would that be any issue? It's going to be a fascinating second-round matchup, assuming they get through, obviously, Omaha round 1. They would either get Bill Self or John Calipari in the second round. That is a 7-10 matchup, Kansas and Arkansas. So that West region, St. John's is a 2, Florida's your 1, Texas Tech is the 3, and then Maryland is the 4 seed there. Boy, how great was that Michigan-Maryland, Eddie? How great was that Big Ten Saturday we got?
Oh, it was. I enjoyed it. I thought that the ending to that game, I could just hear every high school coach in America. I could hear mine saying, stop the ball. You let the guy go down the court and shoot a layup to win.
Get him dribble one-time lateral.
Yeah, as I was telling you, I played basketball at JMV yesterday.
Whoa! Scouting report.
Scouting report on JMV. He can shoot that thing a little bit. So you got to get up. Got to close out.
He certainly wasn't looking like Tyus Edney in the open floor.
He does. I told you, he does that weird thing where he's just like, no, and then he'll go in, and I'm like, this guy's trolling me. But I say all that to say, when you look at some of these teams and how it kind of goes down, you got to make sure that you're staying engaged, and so I'm excited to see how it all shakes out. I don't know if they're going to be as difficult of a matchup when it comes to JMV, but we'll see.
It's interesting. You look at Purdue and their matchup in their region. They've got High Point, who we've talked about all morning long, but they win that game. It's very likely they play Clemson, and then at some point they got to play Houston in that region. That's not an easy region right there. None of them really are, but that's not easy.
You're not on the Will Wade McNeese bandwagon at all?
No, I'm not.
I think Clemson can handle them, but we've seen stranger things.
Yeah, I mentioned this the opening hour. I don't think, you want to talk about a hospitality standpoint, the bars will be flooded next weekend here, no matter what the representation is. Again, Indiana's region at Lucas Oil, that's the Midwest Regional here in Indy. The top 4 seeds, if seeds hold, Houston, Tennessee, Kentucky, Purdue. And even if you don't get that, Clemson's the 5, Illinois is the 6, UCLA's the 7, Gonzaga's the 8. That's it's about as good of a bracket you could draw up. Maybe you would want a little bit more of hotel flavor to it. Obviously, you got some drivable teams, but from a bar and restaurant standpoint, very, very good coming up next weekend here, no matter what happens.
Potential matchup in that region too, James. Illinois, Kentucky. That could be a really fun game.
Yeah, because Illinois could win by 20 or lose by 20. That's how they do it.
But Kentucky, you could say the same thing about Kentucky.
But seriously, I think Illinois is plus minus or whatever, and wins and losses
was that a drum beat?
I have no idea.
A Native American drum beat for the Fighting Illini.
Oh, there we go.
I thought that was I don't know, somebody walking out of a tomb or something.
I thought it was to be Zombie Nation.
Not gonna lie, the Fighting Illini is not exactly PC for a mascot, so I had to go with drums.
Now, have you played the Boilermaker sound?
Yeah. You want to hear it again?
Yeah,
Let me
let's hear
find
it.
it.
You've
Hold
gone
on.
with the 4 Boilermakers. Is that what you've
Well,
gone with?
it's a train and it's a Dumb and Dumber. That's the Purdue train.
Make it 4 Boilermakers.
There
We
you
don't
go.
have a sound of the world's biggest drum.
No. Unless you want the Illini sound again. There you go. There's your drum, Kevin.
And then, of course, the sound for every single team with a bird as a mascot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's eagle right there.
That's an
isn't it?
eagle. We have the birds. We got the Tritons. Nice conch shell.
That's UC San Diego, right? That's who Michigan drew in
Uh-huh.
round 1.
Mm-hmm.
We got some gales for St. Mary's.
Boy, that sounds like St. Patty's Day.
Utah State, the Mormons, shout out.
That's BYU, right? Not Utah State.
Yeah. Same, still applies. The Cougars. The Rams. What else you want?
Is
You
that
want
really a
some?
ram or a lamb?
We've got some, for the weather, like the red storm.
Boy, that is Rick
You
Pitino's
went into
music.
this. I
know.
like this.
The Oregon Ducks.
We might not even.
Times you get here
We might
this
not even
morning.
need to
You
show
were
up
here
the next
already
couple
at
days.
6:30.
We talk some, Trojans.
You guys
be
been
careful
to
with that one.
You guys been to Providence at all?
I've
I've spent a
never
couple
been.
nights
Have
there.
been
Great Italian restaurants for Purdue fans that are going to
nice
Providence.
little downtown Providence area there.
So they'll play at used to be what, the Dunkin' Donuts Center?
Used to be Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know if it still is or not.
Purdue voice Rob Blackman going to join us coming up in 20. Some interesting Colt-related free agency comments. We'll play on the other side. Still got our goats to get to as well. Fan Morning Show here on March Madness Monday. Happy St. Patty's Day to everyone out there. You're listening right here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. quote Mark Dykton in the break, we're celebrating all sorts of green. Here on this Monday. I think
we don't discriminate.
That's good green.
It's a pretty easy one to get up in the clouds about here on this St. Patrick's Day. More Purdue talk.
Sticky icky, as they call it.
Coming up, Rob Blackman, voice of the Boilers, at 9. We've got a tournament bracket challenge. You can find that link on our Twitter page, the Fan Morning Show 1075 on Twitter. James Boyd, you found a Colts quote, departing quote from a man that I really enjoyed having conversations with over the past couple of years. It stood out to you from this weekend.
Yes, sir. I know Mark has probably the sound queued up, and I guess we can play it now. Here's what Grant Stewart had to say about joining the Lions. Not necessarily the Colts, but perhaps you can read it in between the lines if you choose to do so.
I got text messages from family members, from high school coaches and stuff saying, like, hey, like, congrats on, being part of a contender. And I think that's the way it's widely seen. There's probably only, 4 or 5 teams you can say that about confidently, objectively. And I feel like this is definitely one of those places. And it's a place that I think is open to innovation, open to playing the guys who maybe deserve to play, open to putting the best guys on the field, and seem very transparent about everything. It's very hard to find a building full of authenticity from, the head coach to the coordinators and, and having a lot of former players, they seem to understand that as well, having my meetings with them, as coaches. And they're, we're not going to sugarcoat it. We're going to tell you what it is. And there's guys that have been around the league for a while that know how some of it can be business, but it's like when I'm being coached, this is not a business. When, we're talking about how we did on Sunday, it's not a business. This is, we're a team and we want to win. And so being in a building where it seems like everybody is on that type time, I think that a lot of guys can appreciate that and want to be here.
Couple of things there. Talked about authenticity, and also, James, the part about playing the best guys. What does all that mean? Does it have anything to do with the Colts, or is he only talking about being with the Lions?
Yeah, I think it's more so about the Lions and their mindset and how they approach things. First off, I'll start with their contender. They are. That's a fact. I know people kind of got a little, you get the typical, they want to be playoff games as the Colts last year. It's like, yeah, but like everyone knows that they're actually a better team. No one's going to argue that at this point in time. My biggest takeaway was that the programs or the franchises are kind of flipped in their narratives now, or their perception around the league. The Colts used to be the perennial team with, good coaching and good culture. That hasn't happened here as of late. That's the Detroit Lions. And then to your point about, authenticity, playing the right guys, I think he got a chance to play here. He did get a chance to play. And when he did get a chance to play, he took advantage of it. And so I think that he was kind of, from what I understand, just chasing an opportunity to be around some more, I guess, to put it in terms that me and my friends would use, like more dogs. And so he's going to a place that has a certain standard. And I think he just fits Detroit. Like, can you think of a player that fits Detroit more than Grant Stewart, KB?
No, I'm just picturing him headbutting Dan Campbell coming to the sidelines after a big play. I mean, he was only in Tampa for 1 year, so like he was in Indy for 3 years. I might read a little bit more into it than James is, just, in speaking to Indianapolis. He really didn't play at all his first 2 years defensively.
Yeah, I mean, like this past year, I'm sorry.
And then finally, did get a chance this past season. I just think in general, I guess if I have a general thought and takeaway from whether it's Grant Stewart's comments or just the Colts' actions this offseason, I think when we ended the show Monday, so this would have been a week ago today, right? We were at the Corteva Coliseum. Free agency was about to begin. We were there for the Rising League tournament, and we were 3 hours away from things starting. And I think I said to you guys in one of those last segments, Chris Ballard has got to look in the mirror at some point and say this to himself. Only 3 teams in the NFL have a longer playoff drought than us. Only 3 have a longer playoff drought than us.
And it's not exactly the group you want to be mentioned with either.
Well, I wouldn't want to be with any group that has had a playoff drought that is, 29th in the NFL. So, yes, Panthers, Falcons, and I'm trying to think of the other one is
the
Jets.
Yeah.
That's definitely not a group that you want to be mentioned with. So, when I said that last Monday, obviously, look at the action since. I think Chris Ballard has certainly, admitted that. Finally admitted that. Is probably how a lot of fans would look at it. So he has, I think, realized, all right, my stubborn approach hasn't worked. I need to stop being stubborn and try something different. And again, it's not a guarantee it's going to work, but continuing to do the same thing over and over again is definition of insanity.
Running
when the
it back
results
didn't work.
Right,
at
when
all.
the results haven't worked. So I think that's probably my overall takeaway from Stewart's comments specifically. Colts have also had a lot of in-house guys leave. I don't know. I'm pretty hard-pressed to find the last time they've had what, James? Is it 6 guys that have already signed elsewhere?
I believe
Dangbo,
so.
Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, Kylan Granson, Grant Stewart.
Half of them went to the Vikings.
Probably forgetting somebody here.
You
And we
mentioned
still
Dio, I believe. So
We still have Julian Blackman. We still have Mo Alley Cox.
EJ Speed.
I assume EJ Speed. I assume Flacco will find a spot as well. So, yeah, it has been, again, unlike anything we've seen in the Chris Ballard era, especially since his first ever offseason, which I think your first ever offseason as a GM, you're inevitably going to see a ton of change, but he's been a man of his word so far.
All right, we'll talk more about this a little bit later on next hour. Rob Blackman, voice of the Purdue Boilermakers, coming up at 9 o'clock in just a few minutes. We'll talk about their number 4 seed in the NCAA tournament and beyond, along with Kevin Bone and James Boyd and the animalistic Mark Dykton today. Is that fair to say? Yes. All right. I'm Jeff.
Now, they're not in the field.
No.
No, but someone asked just to hear the peacock sound for old time's sake.
I'm Jeff Rickard. It's the
Roll
Drive
Tide, that was the sound before that?
Yeah.
That's right.
Uh-huh. That's some rebel action.
DriveHubler.com studios. Little Billy Idol action. We're good.
This is the Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff.
The 4 seed is last year's national runner-up in the dance for the 10th straight time behind Big Ten Player of the Year, Braden Smith. And in Providence, they will face High Point.
It's called Sex Panther by Odeon. It's illegal in 9 countries.
Who's having a new high point for their program.
Oh, wow, look at that reaction.
And showing out.
Oh, big time.
Their first tournament appearance, overcoming a 15-point deficit in the second half of the Big South.
Maybe a slight edit there from the CBS announcement of Purdue as a 4 seed Midwest region if they're able to get through those 2 in Providence. Right here at Lucas Oil Stadium for the Sweet 16. A man that we had on a whole lot last year during the month of March into April, and he probably hopes I'm saying the same thing here in the next few weeks. The voice of the Boilers is Rob Blackman. Rob, good morning to you.
Yeah, let's bring back Zach Edey for this month and let's make another run here.
Sure, you can clone a couple big Lance Jones threes in the Elite Eight while we're at it here. Let's just start here, Rob. I know, maybe Adam Zucker didn't say it, but I just am so impressed, and I remember it announced last year at this time, and it again holds true here with this year's bracket. 8 straight years as a top 4 seed for Purdue. I mean, of all the stats out there right now, that to me is one of the more astonishing.
Yeah, it is kind of amazing, and you think about a couple of those are number 1 seeds, which is even more amazing, I think, when you throw that there's some ones in that grouping too. But yeah, there's been consistency on the seeding, and I understand that there have been some disappointments along the way in this tournament from Purdue fans, and I get that. Certainly, when you lose to a 16, that one's going to sting for a long time, and then I know a lot of. I've talked to you guys about this before. I know a lot of Purdue fans are still upset about losing to St. Peter's, but as I've often pointed out, that at least was in the Sweet 16. It wasn't a first rounder. At least you just got into the second weekend of the tournament. But yeah, to your original point, that even when that stat was brought up last night, someone had mentioned that to me. I guess I'd kind of forgotten how good Purdue had been, at least consistent Purdue had been in getting these high seeds. And now the trick is, of course, cashing it in, and it's something Matt Painter's talked about numerous times, especially the last 3-4 years specifically. If you want to set yourself up for success in the NCAA tournament, you need to have yourself on a good seed line, and to do that, you need to really schedule a difficult out-of-conference schedule, and that ultimately what's helped Purdue this year. Purdue hasn't had a great season. Certainly, if you just look at the record-wise, 22-11. It's good, not great, but when you look at Purdue's non-conference schedule, who they played, they were rewarded for that schedule. So they ended up getting a number 4 seed. So, good seed line. Now let's see if Purdue can take advantage of that.
And just add a little context to that before James Boyd throws one your way, Rob. Arizona, Tennessee would be second on that list with 4 straight years as a top 4 seed. So Purdue double of anybody in college basketball.
So, Rob, I'll take it here, and a little bit unserious question this morning, but I'm looking at your header on Twitter, and everyone's losing their mind in the picture. And I would imagine you want to lose your mind like that come tournament time. So can you explain what this is from? What call, what game, what moment?
Sure. That's an easy one. That's the only made 3-point shot of Zach Edey's collegiate career.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's when he banked in the 3 at Mackey Arena against Indiana late in the game on the little pick and pop. Now, of course, the great irony is he's actually become a pretty prolific 3-point shooter in his NBA career. But yeah, that is the reaction shot from the only 3-pointer that Zach ever made in a Purdue uniform.
That's awesome. And so I know he's moved on and made the joke about bringing him back for this run, but you still have the Big Ten Player of the Year in Braden Smith. So what have you seen from him in the absence of Zach Edey and taking on more of the workload, obviously, to have another great season?
Yeah, when you're the Big Ten Player of the Year, obviously you've done a few things right. And really it's been about his ability to distribute and to distribute more evenly across the board with all of his teammates. He ended up leading the league in assists per game. I think it was 8.8. Ended up being the league leader. And if you look at his assist distribution compared this season to last, most of those last year were headed in Zach Edey's direction, and of course they should have been much more evenly distributed this year, although there have been certainly a significant number that have gone to Trey Kaufman-Wren. But that and defensively, his defensive numbers are really – I was a little bit surprised he didn't get a little bit more love on the Big Ten all-defensive team just because of the numbers he put up on that side of the ball this year, 75, 76 steals, somewhere in there, which is top 3 all-time Purdue history for steals in a season. But I think it was really those two areas, distributing the ball a little bit more evenly to some guys that he knows are more than capable of scoring it, and his defensive play picked up immensely. The scoring was there. I think we all kind of knew that would be there. But yeah, those would be the two phases of his game. I felt like he really took a step in the right direction.
So the voice of Purdue basketball, Rob Blackman, joining us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Just curious, Rob, the health status of Fletcher Lawyer and just how important he is to this team to make a real run here.
Yeah, well, best three-point shooter in the Big Ten, 47%, just looking at percentages. So yeah, he's pretty important. And I think I mentioned this a couple times in a broadcast late in the year, but they're coming down a stretch. I don't know, the last 12 or 13 games of the year, Fletcher's like around 60% from three, which is an incredible number. So you would kind of prefer to have him in the lineup. Certainly looks like he's going to play. I know Matt Painter mentioned at the press conference after the tournament draw last night that he probably would not practice today, but would practice Tuesday, Wednesday, and then be ready for the game Thursday. So I did see him last night at everyone gathered at Coach Painter's house to watch the draw, and now granted he had a long sleeve shirt on, so I guess I didn't see the elbow that well, but he certainly didn't seem to be any worse for the wear, and he wasn't wearing a brace or anything on it. So that would lead me to believe that he's going to be just fine when it's all said and done. That was such a nasty-looking injury at first, the way that thing swelled up in that game Friday night. And, man, you just thought that this can't be good. But apparently it's not all that bad because it sure sounds like he'll be in the lineup again on Thursday, which pretty good news for him because he and Braden have started every single game they've been in the Purdue uniform. So we don't want to see that streak stop.
Yeah, when he went down, Trey Kaufman-Wren went down a couple minutes later. I'm like, oh boy, I thought Braden Smith's ankle or knee, whatever it was, last year in the Big Ten tournament was enough. That's the voice of the Boilers, Rob Blackman, with us here again. 12:40 coming up on Thursday. Purdue and High Point. Rob, in your early work, what do you know about High Point? What do you know about Providence?
I do know that High Point can score it, 82, 83 points a game. A lot of high major transfers. Guys that have been other places that kind of look to resurrect their career at a place like High Point, and they've done just that. They've won their conference the last 2 years. Now, last year they got upset in their conference tournament in overtime, so they didn't end up going to the NCAA tournament. But it is significant that they're there because this is the first NCAA tournament they've ever been in their school history. So. But yeah, a lot of guys that can really score the ball. They play at a high pace. One of our coaches mentioned to me, kind of similar to Iowa, if you want to look at them that way offensively, the way they like to get up and down the floor and shoot the three. The one thing I will say that I hope plays to Purdue's favor, their coach Alan Huss was a longtime assistant at Creighton with Paul Lusk, who was an assistant on our staff. He and Coach Huss were together at Creighton, so. Just having a quick brief conversation with Coach Lusk last night. He said you'll see a lot of Creighton in these guys as far as what they like to run offensively and defensively. So hopefully that can help Purdue a little bit, that maybe we have a little bit of insight of what they might be trying to do. But, just for maybe for your listeners that aren't as familiar, and I didn't even know this until doing some research last night, Coach Huss spent a 3 years as a head coach at La Lumiere up in northern Indiana. And
he was at Culver before that too.
Yeah, he was at Culver Military. Yeah, so our Coach Painter is actually very familiar with him because we've recruited a lot of La Lumiere kids over the years. Raphael Davis was one of his guys that we recruited. So there is some familiarity there from a coaching standpoint. But yeah, just man, they play fast. They're not afraid to get the ball up on the rim, and they only lost 5 games all year. And by 23 total points, and one of those was a 10-point loss. So that means they lost 4 games by 13 points total. So that's how close they are to being, an undefeated team. So they are certainly legit. There's no doubt about that.
I'm sorry. Last one for me, Rob. I'm just curious. You've had so many moments that you've called and been a part of and seen, putting you on the spot a little bit, but who are some of the players you're like, man, this guy made this time of the year really fun for me? Like, for example, I think of, Ryan Klein and Carson Edwards, and that was like my first introduction to like this era of Purdue basketball, and I was thinking these guys don't miss. So when you think of just, past or present, who are some of the guys who stand out to you and have kind of made this a very fun month for you?
Well, I would start with Carson Edwards, just because of the performance that he put on in 2019. The great irony to that is, again, if you're a diehard Purdue fan, you'll remember this. Through the month of February and through the Big Ten tournament, Carson was shooting about 27% from 3. And all the fans were clamoring on the message boards, oh, my God, why are we playing Carson Edwards? He's terrible. Get him out of the lineup. He's going to kill us in the NCAA tournament. And what he ultimately ended up doing was killing everyone else in the NCAA tournament when he just frickin' turned it on and could not miss and had Purdue within 0.3 of a second to go into the Final Four. So I always start with that one. But I always and then my second one, my 1B would be that first team that Coach Painter took to the NCAA tournament, which was his second season at the helm. That team ended up being a 9 seed, beat Arizona in the first round down in New Orleans, and then had Florida, who would end up winning it all, on the ropes in the second round. That game goes to the final media timeout, and we're tied, and Purdue's hanging right in there. So that I always think of that specific team, but I always think of that also one specific play. And again, Purdue fans will always remember this one. Chris Kramer making a shot from the elbow on his knees in the NCAA tournament with the shot clock running out. It was just kind of the icing on the cake for that particular team and that particular run in the NCAA tournament because of that historic shot and the fact that indeed that was, here we are, we're talking about the way we started this conversation. 8 straight years of having, a 4 seed or better. And it all started, 19 years ago, Coach Painter's second year when Purdue made its first NCAA tournament under him and had, like I said, had Florida on the ropes there. So, yeah, those are the two that one particular player and then one particular team that will always be special to me, that's for sure.
Well, Rob, safe travels. I know it's an early call on Thursday, 12:40 for you. I would try to remember the name of the Italian restaurants I've eaten. When the Colts played in New England, we actually would stay in Providence quite a few times. So I think there are a couple good Italian joints, and hopefully you've got a few nights to enjoy those.
Yeah, if you think about it, please text me because I'm always looking for a good restaurant on the road.
Yeah, the Colts playing meaningful games in New England hasn't happened in a while, Rob, so my memory's a little fuzzy. But if I do think of those, I will certainly send them your way. Safe travels, and hopefully we're talking to you on Monday for a trip to Indy.
Okay, Kevin. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
That's great Rob Blackman right there, voice of the Boilers, Payless Liquors Hotline, 7.5-point favorite in round one, a high point. The Iowa comp, I think, is interesting, just knowing what Iowa has been here. I'll add this. I know you guys have poo-pooed my thought of High Point has played absolutely nobody this year. I think it's just a fact. They also are not a great rebounding team. And I think if you're going to look at Purdue's weaknesses, Matt Painter's even said it.
They don't rebound that well.
Yeah, I think he's kind of said, we're not the greatest rebounding team in the world. If you would have seen a mid-major that popped up as the 13 of like a great rebounding team, I think that might strike a little bit more fear in you. Certainly some strengths that High Point has, but just a couple things to point out about their resume.
Well, real quick, Zach Edey, just for a fun fact, I know Rob mentioned that he's a prolific NBA three-point shooter now. 1 made 3 in his Purdue career. He's got 16 in the NBA so far, and he's shooting 35% from 3.
How about that? 35% for Zach Edey.
Not bad. It's a longer shot, too, as well. So
the production's been a little quieter as of late. Is that still happening if you've got the Zach Edey stats in front of you there?
But still, for the season, he's averaging 9 points and 8 rebounds and 1 block, so that's not too bad for an NBA rookie.
Not at all.
Take that. And I don't think anybody at Purdue is going to be looking over or overlooking anybody at this point in time.
No. Just trying to point out what, again, Rob mentioned this. High Point does have a Texas Tech forward, I think Mississippi State guard transfer, or maybe it's flipping that. It might be Mississippi State forward, Texas Tech guard. So, I mean, they certainly are a very talented offensive team. I think that is probably their greatest strength, but just some other items to point out. Again, if Purdue wins, they would get the winner of Clemson and McNeese, Brad Brownell and Will Wade, a couple of people that I think probably have a lot of opinions on the Peegs.com message board right now in regards to that opening down there.
Well, the other thing you look at, too, is, as you pointed out a couple of times, Kevin, for those just joining us now, I mean, look at the coaches and the teams in that region if they all come to Indianapolis as winners. I mean, you're talking about Purdue, you're talking about Kentucky, you're talking about, at some point in time, Gonzaga, or certainly Houston and Kelvin Sampson. I mean, that's going to be a packed Lucas Oil.
Would IU fans cheer for Kelvin Sampson or Purdue in the Sweet 16?
Ooh.
Kelvin Sampson.
They might skip that game.
Yeah.
And I hear I'd rather, sinkhole at Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yeah. I think the current hate, though.
It's too early to put out that poll. That's the ultimate jinx, of course.
Yeah.
But Mark Dykton, when we get there, that needs to be a poll.
Sure.
IU fans, do you cheer for the man that some might say has ruined the program here over the last 15 to 20 years, or do you cheer for your hated rival?
I already see, I'll put the poll out with just the two options.
No, and you're not putting any. You can't put C as a sinkhole.
That'll be in the comments. Can't neither be an option? No. Pick one.
Marcus,
take your medicine.
No, I love.
I'm with you, Mark.
No, I had a teacher in high school, and that was one. I don't remember anything he said in his class, but he told me, James, always have an opinion, always pick a side, and in sports. It's like one of the one times you can pick a side. It's not like the end of the world, so I like it. I personally, if I'm in those shoes, I'm picking Purdue to lose. I'm sorry. The current hate would outweigh my previous hate.
Yeah, if you're Indiana, you have to just root for Purdue to lose. That's how it works, and then vice versa.
I mean,
Kelvin Sampson?
I know. Do
you know what IU basketball has been since Kelvin Sampson? Have we not reminded the audience enough over the last 2 hours?
Do you just not watch it at all then? I'm like, what do you do?
Yeah, you go to the park that day.
I feel like we're on the pettiness scale right now. How petty do you want to be?
James, boy, this is right up your alley there in terms of pettiness.
I know, but I'm like, man, do you think I would cheer for the team that is everything I want to be as a team that's playing? No. I want to hate the current brand. If they were playing anybody else, I'd probably hate them. But you know me, I got enough hate to go around. So I'm not one to switch around every few minutes to,
I'm impressed by your levels of pettiness over here.
Oh, you got to love it. You got to embrace it.
Layers on layers.
Oh, yeah,
you got to embrace it.
I've listened to this man talk a lot in the Colts media room. Trust me.
Things that cannot repeat it on air.
Oh, KB, let's get to a morning check down and tell you about all the other things going on in the world of Indiana and Indianapolis sports. Nice to hear from Rob Blackman, the voice of the Boilermakers just a moment ago. Purdue, a 4 seed. They'll be taking on High Point, and they'll get the winner, if they win that game, they'll get the winner of Clemson McNeese. Pretty interesting region, as you've been pointing out all morning, Kevin.
That is the Indy region, and it is loaded there from a flavor standpoint of teams that I think would be consuming a lot of beer and food in downtown Indianapolis next weekend. Houston, the 1, the 2 is Tennessee, the 3 is Kentucky. Again, Purdue is the 4. If you want to go a step further, Clemson's the 5, Illinois the 6, UCLA the 7, Gonzaga the 8. So even if you have some upsets, it's still pretty loaded. Again, we'll get things underway coming up tomorrow in Dayton. How about the play-in game tomorrow night? 2 of the last 3 finalists. San Diego State and North Carolina. They were a game away from cutting down the nets, and now here they are in Dayton. Obviously, a lot of debate on that. We'll continue to hit on how undeserving is North Carolina, and what does that mean for Mike Woodson and the Hoosiers.
There's an Aztec death whistle, by the way, for those San Diego State fans.
I was wondering I didn't know if that was Indiana fans screaming about not getting in or what that was there. All right, on the women's side, we do have 3 teams from the state. Notre Dame, Stephen F. Austin, that'll be the opening round in South Bend, the 3 seed, the Irish there. I thought they should have been a 2, but we'll see if they have the motivation there of Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles in the backcourt. Indiana women, they do get in. I think they were on the right side of the bubble. Terry Morin's bunch for the 6th straight year. They are a 9 seed taking on Utah. That's in Columbia. Remember, they gave South Carolina an interesting game last year,
did.
James Boyd. So we'll see if that pops up. And then lastly, shout out to the Ball State women. It's been a hell of a run there for Brady Saleh, their head coach. A lot of local flavor on that roster. Allie Becky, the MAC Player of the Year. They will play as a 12 seed. They've got Ole Miss in round 1. Do the Ball State.
One other quick note on that one. UCLA is the number 1 overall seed, their first year in the Big Ten. Who was the last Big Ten winner of the NCAA tournament? In the women. Remember?
Women?
Anybody? Yep.
You got to go all the way back to Purdue?
Yep, 1999.
Over in,
wow.
Quarter of a century plus.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like a
Carolyn
trick
Peckman
question
there.
where, like, did Oregon win it? But I remember they didn't win it that
So
one
the
year.
women and the men
COVID.
haven't won in that long. The men are the year after, right? Michigan State here.
It's been a minute for the Big Ten.
Madeline Bischoff from Roncalli, Alex Richard from Avon, a couple other Ball State local flavor there. So fun season for them, and they get over the hump in the MAC women's tournament on Saturday.
Indiana Pacers play tonight. They'll be in Minnesota. They lost at Milwaukee on Saturday. They're now a half game behind the Bucks, who also lost last night. A game ahead of Detroit in the Eastern Conference standings right now. Milwaukee 4th, the Indiana Pacers 5th. Detroit 6th, but they'll be playing at Minnesota tonight, and then they come home on Wednesday for a nice little 5-game homestand, James Boyd.
Yeah, and all eyes right now are on the injury report. Will Tyrese Halliburton play? He's questionable with the lower back. Miles Turner's questionable with, I believe, a left hip. Aaron Neesmith's questionable. So this is the most banged up we've seen the Pacers throughout this season, I believe,
And
especially at this second half of the
Siakam's
season.
out?
And Siakam is out as well. I'm sorry. Personal reasons on that. So definitely want to keep, whatever's going on personally, in mind when it comes to him. And then you look at Minnesota, they're rolling, man. They've won, I believe, 7 or 8 straight in a row. They're playing their best basketball of the year. And so it's not going to be an easy game by any means, but it is one that the Pacers kind of need to get back on track.
And on top of all that, Minnesota did play last night. They didn't need their starters for too long. They played the Jazz, if you're wondering, how that game went. Anthony Edwards had 41 points, and he was, I think, the only Minnesota player to play over 30 minutes. So I assume, they're still trying to get out of the play-in out west. So they've got even more to play for than the Pacers if you look at it from that point of view. But yeah, 8 o'clock tonight, and as James pointed out, it is easily the longest and ugliest looking injury report for the Pacers all season. It'll be Siakam's first game missed since joining the Pacers last year.
All right, a little high school basketball for the boys. 4A winners over the weekend, Fishers and Lawrence North. James, you were at the Brownsburg game when they lost to Mount Vernon 74-40, and you said Mount Vernon looked good.
It looked good. Luke Ertl, Purdue commit. I know he's a class of 2026 guy, so he's 1 more year of high school, but the kid can play, and I could see why Matt Painter was interested in him because I could not shoot like that, Kevin Bowen. I was looking at him, and I was like, yeah, that's why my coach told me to just go rebound or defend or run the
Bigger
floor.
guard, right, Ertl?
Yeah, bigger guard. Definitely been in the weight room because that's part of it too. He's just more physically imposing than some of the high school players he plays against, and a very just fundamentally sound player. He can shoot in his sleep. Like I joke with my dad about this all the time. He's a wake up shooter. Like he can just walk in the gym and shoot. He doesn't have to get hot. He can shoot the basketball with the best of them. And so obviously that's going to bode well at the next level.
Yeah, unfortunately, neither of the Southport games are very competitive at all. But 4A Southern Semi-State will be over at Newcastle. So you want to talk about iconic venue for that. I know Jeffersonville certainly has got a great team this year. Fisher's going to go up north, up to Elkhart for that. So
it was Fisher's on the 41-game winning streak, I believe now, which is one of the longest in state history. So
took care of business with Harrison. So again, semi-state round this weekend, 2 games. That's a change here in recent years. Used to be the regional 2 games. Semi-state will be 2, and then we'll obviously crown 4 champions coming up next Saturday over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse.
Looking forward to it. Coming up in a moment, our Goats of the Week. We got a 4-pack to some hockey coming up for the Fuel to give away, so stay tuned for that. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan on a Monday morning. Tournament time is here. Well, here we are. The NCAA tournament field has been announced, and very quickly, Kevin, a fantasy sports site called Sports Millions ran the tournament through an AI model.
Oh, jeez.
They predict that it's Houston's year, and they're going to beat a surprise UConn team in the final.
No,
how about that?
No.
That's what AI is
This
saying.
is where we should ban
So
AI.
robots are picking Houston.
Robots are picking Houston.
The fact that they're picking UConn is-
to get to the final. Have you
No.
watched? They apparently haven't watched UConn play this year.
How many times do they run this simulation? One time or like thousands of times?
Supposedly AI just has all that at its fingertips. I don't know.
They don't have fingertips, AI.
UConn and 8.
Or do they?
Out west. Florida is the 1. We don't give a lot of live sport updates on this show, and I don't know how much of our audience cares about this, but to make it an NCAA tournament reference, we have a playoff right now in the Players' Championship for golf going on. Rory McIlroy looks like Houston, and J.J. Spahn looks like SIU Edwardsville.
Oh, we like that one, huh?
Rory birdies the first of 3 holes. J.J. Spahn hits in the water, has no idea where it is. On the second hole, that would
That's
be the
tough.
Island Green 17. So unless Rory falls apart, it looks like he will take home, I believe it's the biggest purse in professional golf, at least until the Tour Championship. So Rory McIlroy on his way to winning the Players'
That was
Championship.
Saluki slander by Kevin Bowen.
Ooh, there you go. You got a Saluki over there?
No, I don't.
All right.
I don't even know
No,
what the hell that is.
Salukis are Southern Illinois, not Southern Illinois Edwardsville.
Oh, whatever it is.
Come on.
Bah, where's the
Whatever.
Come on
sound?
now, Mark. If we're going to be on our animal game.
Okay.
We got to be on it.
I'll
Yeah.
dig myself.
I like what Rory
What a good
said going
sport.
into that, too. He said, I just need 5 good swings for the 3 holes. I need 5 good swings.
Well, so far he has accomplished that, and I cannot reiterate enough how much J.J. Spahn has not accomplished that. So I think this is like when, especially I feel like facing Houston, I feel this way watching Houston. It's like you all of a sudden go through the first 4 minutes, and you get to that break, and you're like, oh my gosh, I need all the water in the world.
That's how they play.
Bringing the ball up against Kelvin Sampson and company.
I think it's similar with St. John's, honestly.
Sure, 100%.
Like they play a
Yeah.
similar style of brand, but to bring it back to the Indiana angle, I think that when it comes to Purdue, their brand has to be, one, the role players kind of knocking down some shots. Obviously, I expect Braden Smith to be Braden Smith. Trey Kaufman-Wren has to be Trey Kaufman-Wren. But what we've seen from Miles Colvin and, Cam Heidi, like we need those guys to step up and continue
they've
to
been
make
pretty
some
good
shots.
as of late.
Yes.
Colvin and Heidi have
Oh,
been
yes.
pretty good amidst this losing run.
Yes. I was just saying, like, that has to continue
Right.
because, as we talked about, the margin for error is so much slimmer than it was last year, where you could essentially just throw it into the biggest guy in the sport and the best player in the sport and ride him. I think it's got to be more a collective effort, and I expect them to kind of respond. And then also, I mean, having dealt with, I know Trey Kaufman-Wren touched on this, having dealt with the highs and lows of the March Madness NCAA tournament, I think that helps you, at this time of the year because you've been through it a few times before.
If you're interested, they've got Purdue going to the Sweet 16, getting past High Point and Clemson.
These are the robots.
Yeah, this is the robots.
The robots.
Robots.
You got
Mark-
any AI people that do you have to use like what is it like software to make sure students don't use AI for papers and things like that?
Yeah, I'm supposed to, but I'm just like, if you're that smart to figure it out, who knows?
Oh, so
Kevin
if
gives
you go
up.
to IU and you want to cheat,
He's
here's
throwing up
how
his
you do
hands.
it.
He's throwing up his
If you have
hands.
to cheat to pass my class, you got a lot bigger issues on your hand. We've done a lot of animal sounds. Mark, you got a goat over there by chance?
Who is the GOAT?
I told you all that I was the greatest of all time. Jordan, here's Michael at the foul line. A shot on Elo. Good! That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Or GOAT?
This guy sucks.
Of the week.
All right, let's go around the horn here. Our good goats of the weekend. Jeff Rickard, why don't you lead us off?
I'm going to go with Joe Burrow. He got his guys paid. Not only did he get paid, but the Bengals wide receivers now are going to make a collective $70 million this upcoming season. Between the three of them, they're creeping up on like 40% of the entire salary cap. I don't know if it works out for them long-term as a team, but James, boy, you got to be impressed by Joe Burrow going to bat for his guys and making sure they stick around.
Yeah, he has sway. There's only a handful of players in the league that can make a team do something. He's one of them because he's one of the best in the world. So I understand.
An interesting way to build a football team, though, Kevin. We'll see if it works out.
James, what do you got?
Allie Becky. is my GOAT of the weekend.
Shout out to the West Side.
Good job.
Yes, I've said this before. I believe I told you all off air. I don't know if I've said it on air, but I saw her playing in the Class 4A state championship a few years ago against Crown Point when Crown Point won it, and she was awesome. She could play. And so the fact that she stayed home, didn't transfer, and has, revitalized that program along with, some other players from the state and their coach, hats off to her. And it's cool to see that, you get to grow up in the state, play basketball in the state, have success in the state, and then now go off to play in the NCAA tournament, which is a lifetime, experience.
Friday at 6 for the Ball State
MAC
Women's
Player of the
Cardinals. Yes, she had some big shots there as they really pulled away in the fourth quarter of that MAC title game on Saturday. Them and Ole Miss in a 5-12 matchup on Friday. Mark Dykton?
My good go of the week goes out to Dickie V. Dick Vitale, who was on the call for the ACC championship. They went to him. He's obviously had cancer issues and all that stuff. They went to him on the announcement. I got a little emotional, though, during the ACC championship, talking about just being back in the state of basketball.
I like it.
A miracle, really, to sit here with you guys. I can't tell you how much it meant to me. Really, it's been unbelievable. You're the best, pal. You're the best. Tough 3 years, those 4 cancer battles, but I don't wish on anybody. Cancer sucks, and I'll tell you this. Anybody battling cancer, please listen. Think positive always and have faith and believe. And if you're out there as a person that knows somebody with cancer, send them a text message, send them a phone call, or make a phone call. The bottom line, it means so much. I know it meant a lot to me in my darkest moment when I was in the hospital doing chemo and had a bad day. And man, it was a tough time, and I had to stay overnight, and my family left, and I broke up crying like crazy, and a nurse came in and she cheered me up. And then I went to my phone, and on my phone were messages from all over the country, from Rick Barnes, Tom Izzo, Calipari, coaches, people.
So we've all, if we haven't dealt with cancer ourselves, we know someone that has had it. Cancer sucks. It's great to see Dickie V on the broadcast. But yeah, if someone's down, shoot him a text message. You don't know how much that can lift their spirits. I thought that was fantastic by Dickie V during the ACC championship.
Yeah, I thought that was a great scene. Also, shout out to the CBS team. I thought that was wonderfully well done, leading off with a Greg Gumbel tribute yesterday for Selection Sunday. So, sadly, but really well done, both of those. My GOAT of the weekend, I know we spend a lot of times, and certainly we are prisoners of this on our airwaves. We promote the big-time sporting events in Indy, and I think we do such a great job of that. I don't know if people realize this past weekend, not only do we have the Big Ten Championship, but we also crown national champions in D2 wrestling, D2 swimming and diving, D2 track and field, natatorium, state fairgrounds as well. Shout out to the Indiana Sports Corp. Just incredible to host those 4 different venues, or different events, I should say, spread across downtown Indianapolis and the near north side as well. And a special shout out to Bren Greenwald of the Augustana Vikings. She was an All-American in track and swimming this weekend. Woo. She double dipped, folks. Back and forth from the natatorium to the new track at the state fairgrounds. Cannot imagine doing that. Quite impressive there.
Do you think she's fit?
All-American in the 100-meter free. All-American in the high jump as well.
God couldn't give me that kind of talent because I would be so arrogant. Oh, my goodness. All that humble stuff, nope. I would talk my you-know-what.
Boys, we got to go quick here. Your bad GOAT. Jeff Rickard?
It's a lost opportunity. At home, with a crowd 90% in your favor, Indiana, I think if they win that game against Oregon, they probably make it into the field of the NCAA. They just had to do that, and they couldn't quite get it done. That still doesn't sit right with me.
My lowercase GOAT of the weekend is Myles Garrett, who probably still is winning in life, regardless. Signed a huge extension to stay with the Browns, and he said, it was never about the money. It's always been about winning. That's where my frustration lies. No, that team stinks, but you got a lot of money to stay with a team that stinks, which I understand, but it's not about winning with the Browns. Winning and Browns don't go together.
Mark?
Probably a rare, I think this might be the first time ever in the GOAT of the week. My lowercase GOAT goes out to Kevin Bowen.
Oh,
Whoa.
Hold on. Whoa. We got some beef.
Did you see him sit up straight?
We got some beef.
PBR party was on Saturday. Union Jack, Jay Query. The PBR party origination came on the Kevin and Query show. Who no-showed? Mr. Kevin Bowen.
First off, I had no idea about said party.
Everybody else did.
And secondly, some quality father time is going to get knocked on.
Hey,
Here, Mark Dyson?
Derek Schultz was there. His kids were out at Monster Jam. He's like, hey, the wife and kids are off for a little bit, so he had some time. People were out. Everybody kept asking, where's Kevin? Where's Kevin? I said, I don't know. Probably fatherly duties.
Kevin,
but you were missed.
That's not even a low-key microaggression. That's just a full-on aggression.
I know. I don't know why Mark had a jab there. I will end with Bubba Cunningham, the AD of North Carolina. Just an absolute joke in him getting his team into the tournament. I don't want to hear for 1 second, he wasn't in the room. The inherent bias that is undeniably there. And then, he's got to have, like, the spokesperson with him every time they're asking about North Carolina here. Afterwards, North Carolina had no business making it over West Virginia. Absolute joke. Bubba Cunningham, your negative goat of the weekend.
There you go, Mark Dyson. All right, coming up in a moment, we will have our Jiffy Lube stat of the day. We will also have a 4-pack to give away to an upcoming Indianapolis Fuel game. Looking forward to that, along with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dyson. I'm Jeff Rickard, live from the DriveHubler.com studios on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Indeed you are. From the DriveHubler.com studios, Mark Dyked, and we have a family 4-pack of hockey tickets to the Indy Fuel to give away right here, right now. That's a really, really fun evening. I don't know. You got to go, right?
I went, and it was good time, nice atmosphere, easy, location, and I enjoyed it.
I haven't been out to the new Fishers Event Center. It's cool.
It is beautiful. I walked in. I was like, oh, I am home, baby.
We may need a show trip out there.
Yeah.
That'd be a lot of fun. All right, fast fingers today, Mark. Very first one to get in at 239-1070 gets the family 4-pack today. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right. In the meantime, we got some business to take care of on some other fronts as well. Kevin, can you educate us a little bit more today on something happening around the world of sports? You want to do that?
A little Jiffy Lube stat of the day?
Yeah, let's get the Jiffy Lube stat of the day
Make me smarter.
All right.
Purdue.
Wow.
There's no music. You can just go.
I was going to say.
I just want to have the music bed.
I thought I was good here. Purdue one of 3 D1 teams that has a double-digit active streak of reaching the tournament. This will be their 10th consecutive March Madness appearance. If I'm not mistaken, I think they benefited from the COVID year. The 2 schools that currently have longer streaks of reaching the Big Dance, Gonzaga, which is in the tournament for the 26th straight time, and Michigan State with 27 appearances in a row. The all-time record? Any guesses?
Which all-time record?
It's just 27, so it could be.
Is it a?
Excuse me, it's 28, so Michigan State could tie it next year.
Is it a Kansas?
James Boyd?
Ooh, Kansas was my pick as well.
Ah, you two are on the same wavelength. You got a couple smart dudes right here.
Oh, there we go.
Rock chalk, baby.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna say that team is always in there.
Yeah. Doesn't seem to matter who's coaching, does it?
I mean, Bill Self ain't going nowhere. I'll tell you that much.
It's rare to see them, honestly, on the 7 line.
Yeah, that's true.
This year,
that is
as
true.
a 7 seed, surprising. That is a juicy round 1 matchup. That is Bill Self versus John Calipari. 7-10 right there. The winner would, in all likelihood, get Rick Pitino and St. John's in round 2. If you're looking at your bracket, that's bottom left in the West region. Florida, the number 1 seed in the West region.
You were talking about your Notre Dame women a little while ago, and I know they're the number 3 seed, and they have maybe the best backcourt, as you guys have talked about, in the country. But it wasn't that long ago they were perceived to be a number 1 seed. I think they lost 3 of 5 down the stretch, didn't they?
Yeah, they had a little bit of struggle there at the end of the year. I know the ACC maybe not as vaunted as it has been in years past. I think that contributed to it. Yeah, they'll get started on Friday. We'll have Indiana and Notre Dame women's side both afternoon on Friday, and Ball State women at 6 o'clock. Very fitting on this St. Patrick's Day. Roy McIlroy is indeed your players' champion. Dusted J.J. Spahn in the playoff this morning. Rory was fine, and J.J. Spahn was really bad. That pretty much sums up what you saw.
That'll do it. Three holes, that'll take care of it, right?
Yeah, they didn't really even need to play the final hole, to be honest with you on that. One final time, I know for fans that are still waking up this morning, if you want to have a gripe, they should be burning more couches in Morgantown. I think West Virginia fans should be.
So not Bloomington.
Irate. Bloomington, no. They're on spring break, thankfully. But
maybe they should drive to Chapel Hill and burn the couches.
Well, I think West Virginia, it's almost like a right of the sun rises from the east and we burn couches here. So I just thought it was a joke. They don't get in. 6 quad 1 wins, 5 away from home. I thought North Carolina had no business getting over them.
100%. Also tonight, the Indiana Pacers come your way 8 o'clock. They'll be playing in Minnesota. And as you guys have pointed out all morning long, the injury list is long, extensive, and includes some important personnel.
Yeah, Tyrese Halliburton is questionable with the lower back. Miles Turner is questionable with the left hip. I believe Aaron Nesmith with his left ankle injury management, he's questionable. And then Pascal Siakam is going to miss his first game as a Pacer due to personal reasons. And so, obviously, with Pascal being out, you'd hope some of those other guys get in because this is a big matchup. And as we talked about, the Timberwolves are rolling.
Kevin, we're counting on T.J. McConnell and Obi Toppin to carry us tonight. That's what it sounds like.
Well, yeah, you're going to need a big night for Matherin, Nemhard. Yeah, it's not great. But, if you get through this, you do have the ability here of, Dallas, we know their situation. Brooklyn Thursday, Brooklyn again on Saturday. And just in general, it's much more of a home schedule. The Big Ten tournament has finally exited. So the Pacers can, play their heavy home schedule to end the season. And again, Milwaukee lost last night. They had a back-to-back of Pacers Thunder. It's quite the back-to-back there. And the Bucks are on the road now for 5 straight. So, again, there certainly is an opportunity here if you get through tonight of a very favorable schedule here coming up down the stretch.
I think 16 games between now and the 13th of April. So there's going to be a lot of NBA action coming your way, too.
Absolutely.
That's a busy schedule, so you hope you get guys healthy. But the way that the schedules play out these days, you just don't have a lot of time to get healthy in between. That's the thing.
Not really. And again, we got the Pacers, I believe, a half game back of the Bucks in the 5th seed currently.
Yeah. What'd you make of Milwaukee overall the other night? I know Giannis had it going on, and Dame was hitting 6 3-pointers all over the place. But can they be a threat in the Eastern Conference? Are they deep enough to do that, Kev?
Well, anytime you got Giannis and Lillard.
I was going to say, Giannis gives you a chance every year.
I think it was, two things I guess stood out of in the non-obvious category of, Maddie can watch basketball and say, number 34 in green looks pretty good. I thought Kevin Porter Jr. and Gary Trent Jr. both gave them good minutes off the bench. And, anytime you get in a playoff series, when you do go to the bench, what do those non-Giannis lineups look like? What do the non-Halliburton lineups look like? Obviously, that was a big storyline for the Pacers. So that in the non-obvious department stood out. But Giannis, 14 and 19 from the floor. We knew that. I think once we got through the Halliburton celebration of the shot from Tuesday, I tried to bring this up a couple times. I'm like, guys, Giannis didn't score in the fourth. And that's quite the accomplishment, but that also means you're going to see a pissed-off freak coming up Saturday night. And he certainly was that. Hell, he fouled out and still had, 34 points on 14 and 19 shooting. So just whenever that matchup does happen, as much as I think the Pacers are a very tough best-of-7 out, and I mean that. I think they're a tough team. I was reminded that, Giannis didn't play in this playoff series last year.
Well, that's what they'll have to get through tonight. Minnesota, and again, this is a team, Minnesota, starting to play really good basketball. Really good basketball. They are. And so, obviously, you got to, be aware of where Anthony Edwards is at all times and try to knock him off. But they're playing good basketball. But this is what you sign up for when you're the Pacers. You want to kind of prove yourself against the better teams. They're playing great. So, you want to get back on track and kind of spoil their party a little bit. Mark, any closing thoughts on the day full of animal sounds today?
What other sounds do you want to hear? Well, how about number 1, Duke Blue Devils?
Don't mess with the devil, buddy. We're number 1. We beat anybody. We're the devil.
Do you have the sound?
It sounds like a Cameron crazy. That freaks me out.
That's what happens when you wait in line for 28 hours and camp out on a sidewalk.
We got the Omaha Mavericks. Top Gun reference.
There you go.
I like that.
Tennessee Volunteers.
I volunteer.
This is like Mark's Super Bowl.
Thanks, Jennifer Lawrence.
This is real talent right here.
I'd love to hear just a little Rocky Top. Rocky Top's always such a great.
This is true.
Well, Kevin, Florida Gators. Don't mess with the Gators, man.
All right. We'll see what Mark comes up with tomorrow. Great show today, guys. Appreciate it. Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton. As always, I'm Jeff Rickard. This has been live from the DriveHubler.com studio. Jake